I can hear myself. Literally.
Okay, we're going to do roll call.
Why is it okay? Chair Carpenter,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Present.
Landaverdi is excused, Leo,
Here.
Lugo,
Here.
Pereira.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Do you have any speaker cards? Okay.
No public comment?
No.
Consent calendar items. Minutes from the regular meeting, December 11th. Do we have anything on that?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to the business calendar items. And I have the pleasure of introducing our new committee member, Carlos Pereira, down here at the end. Welcome to the committee, and thank you for showing up. With that, I guess we can move on to the Community Development Agency, use of Measure X revenue.
Chair, did you want to allow member
I'm sorry.
Pereira to?
I'm sorry. Would you care to introduce yourself a little further and have anything else to say? I apologize for that.
Yeah, it's all good. Hi everyone, members of the committee. My name is Carlos, and I'm thrilled to be here, but also looking forward to get to work and, serve our residents of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for that.
How do you say your last name?
Perea, P-E-R-E-A.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Is that better? There you go. My name's Stephen Mendoza. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Agencies for the City of Santa Ana. Our department consists of economic development, housing, homeless services, administration, and we also have a division of the old redevelopment agency days. We call it the successor agency division. It's overseeing the unfolding of the old redevelopment, and there's a role in my department for that for a few more years as we wind down the old redevelopment agencies. Within our department, we have a few programs that we are using the Measure X funds, implementing policies of the City Council. We have a budget of $1.725 million for a vehicle incentive program, which is a $500 rebate. Kirsten, one.
Who has control of
Which is a $500 rebate for any Santa Ana resident who buys a car from a local dealer. It also can be a Santa Ana business who buys a fleet vehicle locally as well. But both the business and the seller and the buyer have to be Santa Ana based. It's an annual budget of $1.7 million. In year one, we started the program late in that first year, and we used $230,000. For year two so far, we've used $518,000 to date. We've issued a total of 1,488 rebates to our Santa Ana residents. The next program we have is the development of a tourism district. The City Council has also authorized the expenditure of up to $45,000 for a company to set up a tourism marketing district. It's a 2% bed tax on hotels that will be used for tourism-related marketing. And that marketing district will create kind of a brand like you see up there. Uncover Santa Ana is one old brand we used. They'll develop a new brand and create marketing and a sustainable tool for the hoteliers to use to increase foot traffic into the hotels, which betters all of us by increasing the revenue on the bed tax citywide. It also will be used to possibly promote our tourism-related things, our museums, our zoos, Discovery Science Center, and eventually the mall will have Kidzania, which is another tourism-type function for our city. And then on the next page, we have a rental assistance program. It's a small $25,000 assistance program to help mobile home renters assistance. It's been very hard to get the money out in the field, so we're kind of treating it almost like triage. We're taking the one mobile home where people were hit first and that was Valley High, and we're trying to exhaust our monies in that before we move on to the other applications outside of the Valley High. So we're working with we're handholding a number of residents in those parks in order to dole out the $25,000. We don't know if council's interested in replacing this next year or having this as an ongoing program. And with that, we also had, last year when we went to city council with some of our CDBG funding, they asked us to find some more money to help some people that weren't in the first round of approvals, and those were Santa Ana Extreme, Wise Place, and Natty's House Neutral Ground Program. And that decision was made last May. So then $110,000 were taken out of the city general fund in order to fund these programs. And I think that is it for our programs that we have in CDA. You're next.
Can we just shoot out some questions?
Yes, open for questions, I would hope.
Okay. Steve, thank you for coming in and presenting this to us. I'd like to understand the tourism district. Is that one of the bullet points is established 2% assessment. Has it already been established, or will it be established?
The consultant has been hired. They're working on their program, and it should go to city council for review and approval in probably early May.
I see. So that comes with the program and the request to establish a 2%.
Correct. The council vote would establish that 2%.
Got it.
So the city staff has the ability of entering into agreements below 50,000. So city staff, under the signature of the city manager, hired Civitas at $40,000 to start the process.
And is there some sort of estimated revenue that we're targeting or trying to hit?
They
by this
think
tourism?
it'll be pretty substantial, but it depends on which hotels sign up for it. So if we can get all the large ones and they vote yes, then we'll have a successful program. If the large ones aren't in on it early on, then we could have an issue. But again, we're not going through this without knowing that the bigger hotels are already in on it. So we've got people like Doubletree already in on it. Yeah. So the Chamber of Commerce and myself are working closely with the hotels to make sure as many of them participate as possible, because they all benefit from it. Some of the lesser motels, I think we cut it off at the 70 rooms or below. So the ones that are 70 rooms and above, we're concentrating on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a few questions. I'm going to piggyback on the tourism one first. So is this 2%, is that, it's not an occupancy tax, it's an assessment fee? So is it considered to be a user fee then?
It's almost like when you go to New York and you pay, have you ever seen your hotel bill from New York?
Yeah, it's
show
crazy,
Times
ridiculous,
Square
yeah.
Alliance or those kind of things. It's just like that. Some hotels will have a resort fee. So it's a fee approved by the city, and the city will collect the fee and then pass it through back to the hoteliers to manage and use for their marketing purposes.
So it's a fee that ultimately the guest will end up paying, but it's not an occupancy tax, so it doesn't come back to the city. It's used specifically for this tourism promotion, the tourism district.
Correct. The two alternatives for a city, if I may, is the city could just raise the TOT.
Well, they can't just raise it. Doesn't it have to go to a vote?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They pass the resolution to get it on the ballot. If it's approved, then the 2% would go on the ballot. And then that 2%, it would be up to the city how they used it. So the hoteliers would rather assess themselves so they can control the marketing and not deal with the ebb and flow of a city budget. Saying, we want to use it on police this year, not tourism.
Okay, I think I understand. And 40,000 though to me just seems. We don't have a ton of hotels, but 40,000. This doesn't seem like it's at 2%. It doesn't seem like it's a. Is it just a few hotels that are going to be? Just a couple of the ones that over 70, or
It
obviously
could be about 12 hotels. Yeah.
Okay, so is the 40,000 a cap that's
No,
placed on?
40,000 is the contract to Civitas.
Got it, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's how much the city council is willing to pay to start
Got it.
this.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
what's the projected revenue that would be coming in from the 2%?
Catherine, I can find it in an email. I'll get
Okay.
it to you.
Um,
It's,
I think it was 2 a year.
yeah.
2 million a year?
Yeah.
Okay,
something over that.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's where I'm going, this mathematically, it doesn't seem to make sense, but that makes much more sense to me.
That's just me assuming everyone knows what I talk about. and
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Right. And then if I may, I mean, actually, if anyone else has maybe tourism, if we want to go through that one since he's on it, but if not, on the vehicle incentive program, you had indicated that, if you're a resident of Santa Ana and it's from a Santa Ana dealer, but it's only certain dealers, is that correct? Like, more of the larger ones that were?
It's the new car dealers.
Okay.
Yeah, the new car dealers, the Chevrolet and Honda have been the biggest users of it.
Okay, but it applies to not only used vehicle, or new vehicles, it also applies to used vehicles also.
From
is
a
that
new
correct?
car dealer.
Right, one of the qualified dealers that's listed in
Not the
the,
smaller lots.
right,
We signed agreements with the dealers. So the individual dealers all have agreements with the city for this program.
yeah, it looks like the only one that would be more of a franchise model would be Tom's Truck Center, is that?
And
does that
Tom
seem
Trucks
right?
is a member, yes.
Right.
Because we're hoping to get that business to business as well.
It looks like they've had very, very low usage. Is there a reason for that? I would have suspected that they would, with our business in Santa Ana here, that fleets would be purchasing trucks from them.
Yeah,
Is
you
there?
would think, but they're not.
Okay. And then how are we doing in terms of, so we've budgeted 1.75 million as the cost, and obviously it's kind of a self-funding mechanism in terms of the additional Measure X sales tax that gets paid on the vehicles, in essence pays for this. This program, even though it's all in the same bucket of general fund. How are we doing in terms of, so we're at 519,000 to date. I'm not exactly sure what, to date that, what the date that is, if it's just through the.
Well, it's from
is
July
it
1, so it's about.
Through,
That's almost three, now it's 70% of the year?
Yes, I believe we.
We're about 70% of the year, and we've used less than 1/3.
okay, so are we not getting the response that we were hoping for from this? Are we not, because I believe that they had to put in the marketing towards it, if I recall correctly?
They do, and they've advertised. Some are more aggressive with advertising than others are.
Okay. Is there anything that the dealers are expecting the city that we're not doing that is reducing this, the participation
No,
model?
they made the commitment to do their own advertising.
Okay.
We, at the beginning when we first talked about this, we were going to set aside some of the money for us to advertise it, and they were willing to advertise themselves.
Okay. So it's just purely not hitting what we were hoping it would. On one hand, you hope to, because it's self-funding, and you're actually probably bringing in more money than otherwise. We're just not selling as many cars as we had anticipated. Would that be a?
Or the dealers, or it's not our residents buying the cars.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. And then on the rental, the rental incentive, and thanks for correcting the slide deck, because when I first saw it, it was at 25 million. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, wow, this is.
That was Steven trying to get the PowerPoint
Right?
out as soon as possible. I'm sorry.
But so 25,000, obviously it's not huge money, but the participation rate just seems to be quite low. I think we have 5 applications received and 4 in process, so a total of 9. Is there a reason for lack of participation? Like, for example, sometimes people might, any type of financial aid type stuff, they might be saying, oh, well, my neighbor needs it more than I do, I don't want to take it from them, or like, oh, I'm afraid to talk to the city on something like this. Is there?
I'm afraid to prove my income. I'm afraid to show you all my assets. I'm afraid to do that. And afraid might be the wrong word.
Sure.
Is I may not want to prove that I don't qualify for this. So if I open my books as a resident, if I open my books to you, I may not be eligible for this really. But I showed up at city council and got city council stirred up trying to get assistance for rental. If you remember, they really wanted to go after rental protection,
Right,
and this was kind of a stopgap
okay.
situation.
So what is the expected usage then? I mean, I think we're at like $3,000 right now.
Yeah, we think we'll
So are we
use
gonna be
about
like
20.
10?
We may use
Okay.
20, yeah. We get more aggressive as time goes by because we want to hit the July deadline and try to spend as much money before June 30th, actually, and get it out on it. So we're actually doing meetings in the parks. But we can't go on to one park until we exhaust the other park.
And
Again, we have the triage approach to it.
and how many parks do we have in the city? Is it just the 3?
I believe 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, can I add on? to
Yes,
that?
go ahead.
So, once this program finishes up, with the state law that was put in place, the rents are pretty much gonna be pretty much consistent. Whoever went for the big number now, right before December, the end of December,
Exactly.
they got it. Now, we're just gonna flatten out. So the use of this program will be minimal as going forward, I would assume, because you won't be able to squeeze out that big number that many of the landlords wanted to squeeze
Yeah,
out.
the park owners have had their window, as you put it.
Right.
They had their window, it's over, and that's why we're in the triage mode.
Right, and so once this, either the money gets all used or not all of it gets used, then the use of, the reason for the program almost goes away because the rents have been pretty much flattened out.
Correct. And a lot of these people may have used their allowance for prescriptions on rent. So we're
Right.
actually backfilling other areas of their own budget.
Right,
Because remember, they had to make that gap up.
right.
And if you're on a fixed income,
Right.
you have to take that money from somewhere. So,
I have a couple questions related to that.
Sure, go ahead.
So one is, so you said there are 17 mobile home parks in the city. Is there a reason why these 3 were specifically targeted? Or
because
is
that's where the biggest raises were, increases. Not every
Okay.
park owner increased the rents. And there's some very nice, well-off mobile home parks.
Yeah.
There's
And
a
then-
couple of really great ones.
Yeah, and then the other question around specifically the sequence of this service or support from residents. I mean, with the recent actions of this administration around public charges, do you feel there has been like some hesitation from immigrant families to seek this, thinking that this is going to be like a public benefit that might be a burden to them?
No, we're not getting that.
Okay.
No. Their doors are open for us. They don't mind. They show up and they have cookies and they have a great time. But when it actually comes to proving that they may qualify for this, they have the inability to do that.
And this is only for mobile home parks. It's not for traditional high density or single
But we have
family.
another
or-
program funded outside of Measure X that council approved last year. It was $100,000 in other funds. We have Judson in our housing division has other funds to use from, and we use $100,000 to keep people in their rental units. So if they have a difficulty, we've contracted with 2 charities, both Public Law Center and one other charity, to bring us those clients that are having that problem with the last month, first, those kind of things. And it keeps them in their units and prevents homelessness. So we've tied it to some homeless revenue.
And I'm not gonna, just from a full disclosure, I'm not gonna ask anything on CDBG. I'm a board member of Wise Place, so I'm not gonna involve myself with that discussion at all. In terms of, I have a question that you didn't go through at all here.
Uh-huh.
What, this is what you kind of, Measure X has allowed your group to work on. What additional type items, would be on your wish list or needs and wants list, in terms of what your next budget cycle would be looking for?
Well, yeah, in regards, when you come from community development, we always try to use federal dollars first, then state dollars. We're kind of trained, and Catherine will probably attest to this, we're trained not to ask for general fund money usually. We try to do everything, like the shelter, the future shelter that we have to replace. We first look at the HEAP monies coming down from the state, then the HAP money, before I go to mom and dad and ask for any general fund. So I'm not seeking any general fund monies for those kind of things that I can find federal dollars for first. So from Yeah.
Well, I
just
guess,
kind of holding
I
the
guess,
line.
I guess what Commissioner Johnson is trying to tell you is that we have expressed our, I think the nicest way, our concern that the Measure X funds are not being spent or dispersed as the public might have thought them to be. I.e., most of it's already locked down in long-term stuff. Big chunk of it went to public safety that we won't see for the next 4 or 5 years. And that's gonna come right out of the chute from our first report. Because the voters voted for something, and what we're getting is not what we're getting, not what, at least what we believe the voters thought they were getting. So I think what Commissioner Johnson is getting at, if you had a chance to get Measure X funds, what would you be looking for, or what type of programs would you be looking for that other cities may provide, because they have a stable revenue stream, that we don't provide? I think that's where he was going, because we've asked the police, we've asked parks, you guys are here. We continue to ask people because we never got back to like where it was pre-recession. And now the voters have handed the city $60 million, and the council in their wisest decided to spend, when I looked at the numbers, $57 million of it already. So that's where we're at, and we're trying to figure out how do we get back, because one of the things is we know there's a structural deficit that was never fixed. They just put Measure X in it to fill the hole. So now we've got 10 years plus another 10. We got to figure out how to spend this money. So if there are programs that other cities run that you think would be effective, what would you put on your Christmas tree wish list that we don't have in our department?
Money for Colt, which it's already funding. It's funding it in Public Works for cleanup and contract cleanup around the city. Colt is our quality of life team.
Okay.
It deals with the responsiveness and the impacts of homelessness, not necessarily housing homeless individuals, but it deals with the litter and the impacts it has on the street. And those are the areas where we are using it in Public Works to continue that funding for Public Works, to have those contracts with the litter patrol, the trash pickup, the riverbed cleanup, all the cleanups that we need to do around the city constantly for encampments and those kind of things, to make your daily quality of life in your own neighborhoods better. I don't directly see those monies budgeted in CDA, but as the staff liaison to Colt, I see it. And that's my recommendation. But Public Works will try and get that. So
Well, yeah,
Colt dollars are important to us.
Well, Public Works, they were concerned about the roads.
Yeah.
The quality of the roads. And so you bringing that to our attention is new to us, because we didn't know about that program. We knew the quality of the roads were going down. Voters thought that's what they paid for, part of it. So that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of, okay, because we're going to have time to report this out and make recommendations to the council. The council can take it and leave it, or whatever it is. But I appreciate you doing that, because I think that was one of the reasons they passed Measure X. Because they thought the quality of life in Santa Ana was going to improve.
Absolutely. It's the physical, touchable, tangible things
Yes.
that you as a resident see, that you, an employee of a business of Santa Ana, see every day. Well, if you ride your bike through Santa Ana, if you walk to work, like I walk to work twice a week, what we see, and that's the impact that I'd like to see in the city.
And that program is currently parked in Public Works.
The actual expenditure of the money is in Public Works, but Colt is an interdepartmental team. It has a little bit of recreation people on it. It has a lot of police on it. It has a lot of Public Works individuals in it. And then the homeless service manager as well, who works under me.
And code officers.
And code enforcement is heavily in that. The money that we use to clean up the railroads and then go build them back, all of those things to make your quality of life better as either a business, a resident, a player, a visitor to Santa Ana. Those are the kind of things I'd like to see. I'm off my soapbox now.
I think, well, I'll get on mine for a minute. I think when, none of us are city folks. We all have our day jobs, and we don't always understand, I think, the different departments, and I think Colt is probably one of those very interdepartmental type items. And so, I think me coming into this, I was expecting to hear, the biggest issue that everyone is talking about is homelessness. Okay, and in my thought process, I was thinking that's under your department of CDA, and maybe it's, you're involved with it, and maybe it's not as much in CDA as it is you're involved with maybe some other departments. And so, and we haven't, I don't think this group has really heard from other departments about the needs that would drive forward some advancements in addressing the homeless issues that all of us are experiencing, and obviously those on the street are experiencing more than those of us with secure housing. And so, I mean, if you're not the right, well, I guess one is that in your group under CDA, or is it?
It is, but I don't use Measure X
Right.
for the housing of individuals.
But Measure X is just general fund money.
Right, but I don't use general fund money for any kind of general fund money for housing individuals.
Okay.
I first used state grants, and I used inclusionary housing to build our current shelter. So I exhausted those first. But the part of Colt that is paid for by Measure X is the police officers involved in Colt, and the cleanup efforts involved in Colt. I'm sorry. So it's those kind of things. So Measure X doesn't fund shelters.
So for example, where would the contract with CityNet be at?
That is that in Measure X, Catherine? Yeah, it's just general fund.
I'm sorry, which department is that under
It's
CDA?
under me.
So, for example, I believe just from me contacting and working with our interim homeless liaison, our service manager
Terry.
here, thank you, Terry Eager. I believe that we have two folks with CityNet, just because they've been trying to help an individual that I've come to, want to get help. For example, do we need 4? Well, I think we already have 2 more coming online. I think I think there was maybe some additional funding that was granted to CityNet. But do we need 10 people? Do we need 20 people across our very large city to be able to effectively be able to be in contact with these folks? I mean, in my opinion, too, is because pretty much everyone is going to go out in a team. You're not, pretty rare that you're going to have just one of those individuals go. So they're only targeting one individual or one area at any moment of the day. And so, how much difference would 10 of those folks make? Especially on something that can be ramped up and down. We're not making 30-year, 40-year commitments on these types of things. So, that's where I'm going to press you a little bit. Is that, hey, what would if yes, you're exhausting these other buckets of money, but I think that's because that's what we've been used to. That's those have been your only funding sources. And I think what this group is really asking is, well, what is the best use of all of all the funds, and be able to allow the council, ultimately they're the ones that make these decisions, as you know, and then ultimately allow them to be able to prioritize what the residents want. And quite honestly, I feel like that's an area, homeless type services is an area that needs additional. The residents want it. I mean, from talking to people, that's probably the one thing in Measure X that they were saying, I thought we were going to see a bunch more homeless services to be able to help these guys, get them off the street, what have you, just so it's, increasing our quality of life. So I'm going to push back to you, that I've been on my soapbox a little bit, and maybe you've had an opportunity to be able to say, okay, I get where they're coming from a little bit more now with the question. So I'm going to ask again, what items do you think, would be available in your group in the CDA to be able to address our homeless type issues that we're all seeing every day?
Well, it's all of that. It's the increased outreach, and it's increased enforcement. Property maintenance on the private side is Alvaro's ability to enforce codes on private businesses that are allowing encampments and maybe not cleaning things up as sooner than later. It's all of those things that take necessary efforts all at once.
So how much? I mean, how much does a CityNet person? What's the annual
We have a contract
cost?
with CityNet for $600,000.
So that's for the 2 people.
No, it doesn't say 2 people. It's $600,000. I can use 10 people this week, 2 people next week. 14 people in 2 months. I get to move those bodies around once they've ramped up. Now they, in their first month of a $600,000 contract, they haven't hired all the individuals yet. So they're getting ramped up, and then you'll see them. And I get to distribute them where I want. I could have them go walk down the creek individually when the sun's coming up, or I could have them shadow the officers on their outreach efforts. I could pair them up, I could have them go out individually. I have that choice. It's a very flexible contract. So we just don't want them to be in unsafe areas alone.
Kit?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It's a different matter, so.
No, okay. Steve, if we were to look at, because we had this conversation with Public Works, I'll have the same conversation with you. We were, I think, unpleasantly surprised that the general fund did not fund any public works, or a very minimal amount of public works, where other cities have a percentage. What's the percentage in a normal city, because Santa Ana is a totally different structure city, that goes to CDA out of the general fund?
Most cities don't have CDA. Most
Okay.
cities have men's department. Most cities don't have a housing authority, a housing arm, and they don't have funding that brings in the housing. Most cities don't operate their own Section 8 program. They contract with the county to do that.
So who runs the Section 8 housing in the other cities?
Give me a small city.
I'm making a guess. Garden Grove.
Garden Grove
what-
has a housing authority, Anaheim has a housing authority, and we do. And then the county.
And what about
There's 4.
Okay, just Buena Park would
Buena
contract
Park
with,
doesn't have a housing authority.
so they contract with the county then?
They have the
And the
county.
county manages that
They do the
program?
vouchers, they do all of that.
Okay,
So it doesn't mean a Buena Park resident couldn't have Section 8. It just
Right.
means the Buena Park resident signs up at the county in their
I
Section
got
8
you.
program.
So does Garden Grove fund its whole program, its whole CDA program through, like you do? Or is there money coming out of their general fund to fund the program?
I'd have to,
Because
Look into it.
that's the question we're asking.
Yeah.
And the reason we're asking is Measure X got dumped all into the general fund,
Mm-hmm.
right? We were the first ones, and Catherine pushed back on us, said you can't separate it, it's in the general fund. So our question is, okay, how do we get departments and large departments in the city to function like a normal city off a general fund? And then you guys do the extra mile and go find the money elsewhere, right?
yeah,
But you need the basic minimum amount from the general fund to keep going.
correct.
Even in the worst times, at least we can fund that. So I think that's where we're coming from. We're trying to figure it out, because what we see is that Public Works, everything is a restricted fund. There's no general fund money, and you're like, wait a
And
second.
that's true in most small cities. I've worked
In
with
most
small
most small cities, but we're technically not a small
Correct.
city. So that's what I'm trying to. That's why I'm asking the question. So like, if we were to get to that sense of normal, what does that sense of normal look like for a city our size, which is the second largest city in the county, population wise? What does that normalcy look like?
I would dare to say, I don't know everything about every city. I would
Sure.
dare to say that most of us operate and are wired that way.
Wired
To
the way
use
you
gas
are?
tax first. In
Okay.
Public Works, it's use gas tax
Yeah, sure.
first, and then you reach into the general fund.
Okay.
It's use gas tax, federal dollars, CDBG,
Okay.
anything you can first, then you go into it.
Use other people's money
Yeah, exactly. OPM.
Right.
We're
Okay.
we're all wired
It's
that
not
way.
necessarily other people's money, but they're called subvention funds, so they belong to us. We just have to make sure that we use it in the way that the fund is restricted. The general fund is much more flexible, so that's why you'll see that services, anything that we have, that we can reach into others restricted fund, as you mentioned, and be able to use that to fund the services that we provide. That leaves the general fund to do much more broadly for the community.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the general fund just got a Christmas present of $60 million a year, and we're trying to figure out how we make sure that we help the other pieces that don't always get the bite at the apple,
Yeah.
because it goes to just one or two departments. And that's been, I think, all of our concerns, because when the voters voted for it, yes, it said homelessness and public safety, but it didn't mean all of it to public safety, or 90% of it. And that we've had those raucous discussions here about, like, hey, wait a second. So that's why we're asking the questions.
But don't forget, our homeless efforts are really wrapped around public safety too, though.
Hey, we understand that,
Okay.
but that doesn't escape us from the standpoint of, it's not just homelessness, right?
Correct.
It's graffiti. It's
everything.
all the other things that go into my quality of life. I don't need to see a boarded up house. I don't need to see a yard not done. I don't need to see indoor furniture on the outside. All that stuff that makes my life or your life as you're walking to work
Yeah.
better. And I think that's our concerns as residents of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo that, you know, especially when, you know, you have a department that is so, you know, your department, Public Works, that are so driven by, you know, the grant funding type model, and now I mean, this is about a 20, I think, reverse math would be about 23% increase to the general fund, but your department wasn't really participating in the general fund all that much to begin with, and so now all of a sudden you have this 23% revenue increase, and you have a department that I feel like is, you know, really important to the residents that, you know, if they voted for it, I think they were probably thinking that, you know, Mr. Mendoza's department would have, you know, received some funds to be able for him to go out and, you know, to direct people to do what they need to do, you know, in this area. But because our model, and we weren't able to speak into the, you know, that first year budget at all, which is a whole different issue. But you know, that model of, hey, we're only playing with grant money and not dipping into the general fund money, that's a difficult model, I think, for us to wrap our hands around, not from the funding source, but hey, what are we going to do with this $60 million general fund money? And what, you know, when we prioritize what we need, yes, public safety is part of that, but is it the only part? I mean, the CityNet contract is not public safety. You know, that's and is $600,000 enough? I would venture to say if $600,000 gets us what we're at today, then that's woefully inadequate. Inadequate. You know, because it's giving us what we're seeing down at MHA. It's giving us what we, you know, see when I'm biking across the city, when you're walking to work, and when everyone is driving across the city. It's inadequate, and if we're only, you know, the grant funding, they did not get a 23% increase to the grants that are available, whereas the general fund did. And so we want to try to make sure that, hey, are the areas that are important to the residents and citizens, because that's ultimately who we, you know, why we're here, is because they voted for it, and making sure that the money is going in the right direction, or at least let them know that this is where the money is going and not where you thought it was going.
Let me ask you real quick, and if you could get $2 million, would that help you? If you could get $3 million, what kind of dollar amount would be good for you?
Absolutely, but it's not going to house people that don't want to be housed.
No, I understand that.
Be
We're
careful
not saying
about that.
We're not
but
saying
it
that,
certainly could help clean
but
up
for
the
your
city.
general use to help out because again, the concerns are about all these things in the city.
Before Measure X was approved,
Yes.
we wouldn't even dare ask for a contracts for a maintenance crew to shadow our public works staff around the city 7 days a week to pick up litter related to homelessness. And now we have done that over the last October, we started the new expanded version of Colts, working 7 days a week to do that. And so that money has gone for good. Could we do with more? Absolutely.
Well,
Am I here to beg for more? No.
But that's why, I think
want you to, though.
that's
I think we're asking
I'm
you
not
to
lying.
Our
we're
question-
asking you to say.
yeah, our question is, what would really be help? To Tim's point, the $600,000, if that only gets us where we are right
If
now,
beautification
that's
of
not
our
enough.
city is our biggest challenge, then that tells you where money should go. Beautification, clean up, to be reactive, to get response times. Our response times for graffiti are amazing. Wouldn't you
They are.
agree?
I agree.
Absolutely.
We got to
Yeah.
get that way.
But
with
there's too
homeless.
much graffiti.
We got to get that way with homeless.
But we also need to get the graffiti so it's not there in the first
Right.
place.
We gotta
And
prevent.
we're always attacking the cause, but not the cure.
Well, something that I do want to add also as well in terms of the focus has been on public safety and homelessness, which are critical. But looking at the Measure X and the way that it was written, it's supposed to also support youth and senior services. And I'm looking, like creatively, right? We're one of the youngest cities in the county, if not probably the nation. And we talk about youth activity, especially the summer. We're thinking about how do we prevent young folks from engaging on the behavior that we wish they wouldn't, right? And I think about economic development and work centers, like can Measure X money credibly be allocated towards expanding youth job programs or youth training programs?
I don't need to expand it. I can serve the youth now if they come over to the youth. We have a 2.9% unemployment rate. It's never been better in our city.
Does that rely on grant making money that you
Yeah,
make?
so we
And
owe-
how,
it's a-
how do we
it's a grant.
transition that into like actually be part of course?
But I have the program already. I don't need more money for that program. People could walk into the work center any day of the week. 801 Civic Center Drive.
So what you're doing right now is working, and you know, it's not like you have a big backlog of
Correct.
people that are.
I think Lisa is exploring, Lisa in Recreation, she's exploring a more
Yes.
summer-oriented youth program right now.
Right, but, and as when we were talking to Parks and Rec, you know, some of the basic things they need, which is, hey, everything's a broad word, but yes, close to everything to improve the bathrooms, to make sure the parks are safe so people will use the parks, that kind of basic stuff.
The
Which
tangible, touchable stuff.
Which is the stuff that we were all kind of surprised at, that, you know, the deferred maintenance that's gone on for so long. And that type of stuff would open itself up to other programs, youth programs, all the things that Carlos is talking about. If we can't get the basic stuff to function, the lights to go on, that the bathrooms are safe for women and young girls to use, no one will go to the park.
Yeah.
So I think that that's kind of why we're asking you about what it could be, is because, as Tim said, we got 23% increase in the general fund. So if that went up, so if your budget went up 23%, which everybody's could technically, it's a big number for you. And if we don't have the programs in front of us that you think are working best, are there other programs that we should think about? Like Carlos mentioned, which should we have other youth programs? Should we have other things? So and so that's the question that I think we're trying to figure out. Like when we asked every department, they reacted the same way you did. You were asking me to do what?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're asking you because the voters said here's $60 million. Let's try to figure out how we make Santa Ana better in many different ways.
And you do that through cleaning it up.
Okay.
That's from the CDA perspective.
Okay.
Switching to another area that you're in charge of with the economic development aspect, I go back to our very first meeting, and we had someone here who said, "Hey, priority needs to be generating revenue." I think as a public speaker, maybe it might have been someone on the board here, but what items does the city need to do, or maybe look at other successful cities that they're doing to be able to attract businesses that we should be doing? And if we had the funding to be able to, participate in those programs, or, the tourism district is obviously, I would imagine, one of those. But what other types of items do you see other cities doing that you look at and say, well, I wish we could do that?
Well, many cities are bases their economic development based on what their specialty is. Anaheim, it's all about hotel subsidies. They subsidize hotels to get new hotels built. We're not in that business, but a hotel could come to me any day and say, hey, we'd love to open in your town. Do you offer any subsidies? Do I have $100,000 in my back pocket to give them a subsidy? No, I'd have to go out, I'd have to approach city council in a very transparent way and say, is there any money available for it? And I would ask for revenue to do that. More tailored. Other cities have canned programs to help somebody with a facade improvement, or help somebody pay for their building permits, or help somebody pay to be reimbursed for their building permits after they achieved success with using their building permits and they were signed off. There's many approaches that way. There's many approaches about economic development. Mostly it's business retention and attraction. Most cities figure out that economic development is one thing: how to fill the coffers with more revenue. Whether it's property tax by improving property, whether it's sales tax by attracting sales tax producers, or whether it's bed tax through TOT. Now, economic development has taken on different legs over the years. It's also how to improve somebody's quality of life, how to give someone access to better economics. A family, how do they get to better groceries? A family, how do they get to better banking so they're not gouged by a local bank? The streetcar does some of that. But economic development isn't the old traditional model. It's developing these programs citywide to help everybody rise to the level that water should rise. We should all rise together. So it is very complex. We do a lot of programs that sometimes people don't want. We have a facade program we've had for years. Very few people can afford to put the money into the facade improvement and then get reimbursed by us because they can't front the money, or they don't own the building because they're the tenant, and the landlord won't let them do improvements to the landlord's building. So we have that. Business startups. We also help with business startups. We do a lot of education and funding of business startups if they want. And those are all done through grant programs as well. But economic development's very wide. The car dealers. Car dealers have a choice of staying in our town or leaving in our town. So now we have an incentive program, a $500 rebate, to incentivize that industry. There's all kinds of industries you can incentivize. You can incentivize a Walmart, a Costco, a Home Depot to come into your city.
So when you said that, cities generally focus on what they do, their main industry, or, obviously Anaheim's going to subsidize hotels.
Yeah, it's tourism.
What would, do we have a core industry that are targeting to say, hey, this is going to be Santa Ana? Is it, the arts? Is it, the e-gaming, center? We're the only e-gaming center, I think, in Southern California. Is it, hey, the great restaurants? What is the kind of the target of Santa Ana?
Well, economic development is involved in all of that. The city council has been very engaged in finding funding mechanisms for other things like the downtown BID, the Downtown Business Improvement District, which helps fund marketing efforts for downtown. So they're able to bring people downtown and help the restaurants and nightlife and visitors through the art walk. There's all kinds of different other funding mechanisms. The trolley during the art walk, the new trolley, they go and take jurors down there for lunch. We have many, many opportunities where we work in economic development. Is this a one business town? No. But there is a whole lot of manufacturing here. Yeah. And how do you take care of manufacturing businesses? What do they want? They want clean and safe roads that aren't torn apart and the gravel's not able to be thrown with your fist. That's all they want. They're easy to satisfy, but that's where it comes in. General funds should be used for the road thing. So you're improving their quality of life too by improving their streets and sidewalks and the infrastructure that they have outside their businesses. You ride your bike through here. There's a lot of roads that can be improved. So you can't expect a business to improve their site if we don't improve the offsites. So a robust economic development would have money available to do all of that.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So early on when we first started to meet, some of the public comments that came in revolved around economic development. And one of the comments that I heard that prompted me to take a note was that the economic development department was only staffed by one person. Is that true?
No.
How big is the staff that's...
Economic development is first a little bit of me, then Mark Morley, Sylvia Vasquez, and we have our art staff member, and Tramley, and then we have Julie Castro Cardenas.
So
Julie's funded out of downtown and parking revenue.
So would you say that you're staffed, you're properly staffed?
Oh yeah, for the programs that I have, absolutely.
Yeah. The other
If I had more programs, I would ask for the staff to go with the programs.
So let's get to that, because one of the things that they also brought up, this particular person that commented on it, mentioned the business improvement districts, and they said that it was very limited in the city of Santa Ana. It's not very robust in the manner that it should be. Is there any? Can you tell me a little bit more about the business development?
I don't know
improvement
what
districts.
They mean
by educate us on the business improvement districts that are here.
Well, the Business Improvement District funds through parking revenue and through direct assessment on their business license tax. They are able to receive those funds directly to run the Clean and Safe program, which they hire contractors to maintain and clean their geographic area. Many big cities have several of them. New York City has one in every neighborhood. LA has several. They have the Hollywood District. They have the North Hollywood District. Santa Monica has a few of them. Long Beach has their downtown one that's based on tourism.
How many do we have?
We have one that is split with two boards. It's kind of interesting. You have the Downtown Inc. and then Santa Ana Business Council.
Got it. And would we benefit if we had others, more, and are there other areas that you would target for?
I think the business area would benefit if they can gain an understanding of what that extra money would go to. Like, it's usually done for a region that's interested in improving their situation. So you take someone like South Main. If you had a couple community leaders in South Main, you could easily start one.
Right. Well, let me ask you this question. It sounds like you're looking for a lot of participation from the residents or from the business owners. How much of an outreach have we, I guess, done to them to let them know something like this is an option for them? And do we help them facilitate the ability to galvanize and turn into a, I would say, a voice that would help propose one of these districts?
We do, and that's why we're working with the hoteliers. It's a direct example of that, because they're interested in having their own district.
A quick question for you. So, I don't know if you know this, but if I think about the city, there's a lot of businesses, obviously, towards the freeway, which there's a lot of freeways around us. It seems like there's a very large district of businesses that kind of spread out from downtown towards, I would say, Fairview. There's a really huge district, I would say, to the east and the west, in the north and the south of First Street, going all the way down those, and it's intermixed with communities. How much of our community, or I should say city, in percentage, if you know, is commercial space or commercially zoned?
I don't know. I could get you that answer.
Yeah, the general plan would show that.
Keep asking, and I'll find out the answer.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking is because I think that there seems to be a very good focus on downtown and the hotel industry, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in the other areas where the city, like you mentioned earlier, it's a very large manufacturing city. I know this because I drive through the city and I see all these different areas that really make up the commercial districts that are intermingled within single-family residence. And it seems like the general plan has obviously morphed a lot from the 100 plus years that the city has been in play. But from my perspective, I honestly don't think that we're doing our best effort in reaching out to these business owners and to the business owners that are part of communities to be able to gain efficiencies within that area that will allow us to increase our revenue. I think that is the key in the business community, to be able to kind of reach out to these people, and our improvement and our engagement and our interest in them, I think, is going to be reciprocated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Not for CDA.
Your turn. I'll find that answer for you, but.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move on then, correct? That'd be Planning and Building Agency?
Yes, my name is Mintai, and I'm the Executive Director of Planning and Building Agency. I've been asked to share with you a little bit of information about our department and how we utilize Measure X fund to implement some of the priorities of the city and the city council. The PBA represents I would call the development arm of the city. We have building, planning, but we also have code enforcement. And code enforcement, for those that may not be familiar, is I see the code enforcement as the division that enforces everything else except the penal code or traffic code. We enforce our own local code relating to our zoning, local municipal requirements. So it's what I would consider the Swiss Army knife of my division, my department, my function. They do a lot of things, but everything that the code enforcement division does directly have an impact to a quality of life matters, whether it's visual or whether it's something that is going to be improved over time that is tangible. So we were allocated $282,000 to code enforcement to facilitate and work with homelessness issues. and the dollar amount is to fund 2 additional code officers. Currently, we have a division that consists of 2 supervisors, 2.5 admin persons, and 12 code officers. The additional funding would increase the code officer, at least through the funding, for an additional 2-person. Our goal is to be able to use the funding as well as working with the general fund to increase the personnel for the division, and we are now allocated for approximately 22 positions in total. But for a city of our size, and I was reminded this that in the past, we have had up to 40 persons just in this one single function. So a significant number of staff has been reduced because of revenue issues, because of budgeting issues. However, being the Swiss Army knife of the city, we continue to ensure that we work on issues and help put out fires as they come up. And that's a lot of what we do is reactive. But more recently, we're able to do also a lot of proactive to issues that have come up to the city relating to homelessness. And a lot of that, we have provided assistance in the form of using our existing staff right now, because with the funding, we have to go through the process of recruitment. A code officer is a unique position where there's not a large pool of qualified people. I will tell you that our code department has one of the best code staffing in terms of skills and ability to address issues I have seen. And we're able to do a lot with very little. So what we have done is that we have taken our existing staff while we're going through the recruitment process and allocate it to the code team so that we can address issues relating to public railroad rights-of-way, vacant properties, may that be commercial, residential, private properties. We deal with general maintenance issue. We deal with landscape issues. We deal with transit issue. And we also work and coordinate with the various divisions within our city, including CDA, Public Works, Police Department, a city attorney's office, to deal with all of these issues that is really a manifestation of either vacant property, transit issues, or property maintenance. And it all impacts the quality of life for the residents because you see it visually. And to kind of share with you some of the, what we've done over the past year is that railroad right-of-way enforcement, for example, we're a unique city where we have quite a few miles of railroad right-of-ways within our city, both publicly accessible and also spurs that are, leading from the main line, trunk line into businesses. We have over 10 miles of lines and right-of-way in our city that, even though it's private, it's still very accessible to the public. And as you have seen, the type of issues that we've had. And much of the effort has been going towards, I would say, a multi-pronged approach to dealing with the issues on the site. We were asked early on to work on a program to get the property owner, which is the railroad ownership, UPR, to maintain and take care of their own property. That, in order to do that, we first made contact, share with them the problem that we have. But because of one thing or another, at the end of the day, we have to go through the enforcement process where we actually have to take actions, legal actions, in order to force property owners to do what they need to do. And that's often the case whether it's the railroad, whether it's a commercial property, whether it's residential property. Most property owners don't do what they should do until we use the big, the big arm of the law, right? The big stick. So on the railroad right away, we were able to secure inspections warrant. What that means is that legally we went through the due process where we posted property, we identified problems, and we went to the court in order to inspect the property and start to document the situation on the property so that we can get them to begin cleanup. And that effort was successful. We got 7 warrant inspection that inspected all of the line beginning on Grand, heading south, and then eventually down to Warner and Seaglestrom. So that's a big effort, and it's not an easy effort, but using our code team, using the expertise of our code manager, and I just want to quickly introduce Alvaro Nunez here. He is our code manager, and so he was able to very successfully obtain our ability to get onto the railroad property, work with our police department, with our city attorney's office, and with the the various support through CDA, we're able to get the railroad company at least to start cleaning up. We're still getting to clean up. They're not still cooperating all the way, but I would say that from where it was last year and to where it is this year, it's gotten a lot better. So that's an effort that we have put into in terms of railroad enforcement. Next. This is a property on 17th, and this is an example of a vacant property that, if left to their own device, would look like the picture on the left there. And, again, we have to go through the due process of legal posting in order for us to force the property owner to do the right thing, which is just basic maintenance. It's not, it's okay to have a vacant lot, but it's not okay to have a vacant lot that creates a blight, create a nuisance, or have even fence falling into the public right-of-way and impeding pedestrians. So we again have to work with the private property owner to make those improvements. As you can see, the picture on right is what the after condition looks like. But this is not a one-time thing. We have to continually monitor to make sure that they continue to maintain the property, and if they don't, then we have to go back again and kind of go through the same process of the due process, what I call the due process, to get them to do the right thing. So that's on a vacant property. On private property, as you can see, this is in a residential area where either the home has been vacant or a property owner who doesn't live on the property. And in the back there, what you see, this is on Myrtle, a situation where the house itself has become an encampment for transient. And in the back, people live in the back with tents. They use splice to get power from power lines. So this was a situation where, again, code enforcement, because it is a private property, was the Swiss Army knife that we can use to be able to get on the property through our local zoning code, and then address some of the conditions of building issues, hazard safety issues, and then also address the homelessness issue, or what I would call transient issues, through property maintenance and using the court system. In this case, we even coordinated with the fire department as well as private utility to shut off gas, shut off power, and begin to relocate some of the people on the site. Some might have even received services through going through the link. So this is what code enforcement can help do on private properties. Next. This is a commercial property. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with this. This is the former Marie Calendar. Again, with the closure of a business without the maintenance, it turned into a blight condition. And the due process that we had to do, we had to go through all of the due process, and it takes many hours of coordination and documentation. Finally, we're able to get the property owner to basically demolish the building. And the demolishing of the building create a vacant lot that is less attractive, or I would call creating less of attractive nuisances for a space where people can go in and hide and sleep, or just be there without permission. So these cases, in terms of the type of timing, it could go anywhere between 10 hours, 20 hours, up to 80 hours. That spreads over 6, 8, 12 months. It's very tedious. It requires a lot of follow-up. As I mentioned, our staff has been able to resolve a lot of issues that are in a very creative way. And we respond to these type of issues as they come up. Homelessness was something that we basically shifted our entire focus for the past year, so that we can help the COPE team to creatively solve many of these issues. So that's what we have used to the allocated funding for staffing. However, we're still in the process of recruiting. But in the meantime, without the recruitment, we have reallocated some of our staff time in our regular code enforcement process so that we can address the quality of life issue with the quality of life team on transit issue.
Thank you. This is kind of my pet peeve, to be honest with you. In my neighborhood, you guys have not done your job. Quite simply. I mean, I've called multiple times, and I even have the documentation from the city that says they shouldn't do this, and nothing happens. Or the code inspector comes out, in particular, we're talking about the paving of front yards. They come out and say, oh, yeah, they knock out a little 4x4 square, and away they go. So, as a citizen, what else can I do? I mean, you guys are the quote-unquote enforcement arm of this. And again, going back to the making the quality of life better in the city, which helps reduce the crime and helps everything move up, you guys are fundamental in making this happen. I understand that you're a little bit shorthanded. But again, as citizens, we're told to call in, we're told to do this and all these wonderful things, and nothing happens. So what do?
Continue to call, for one thing.
I'm sorry?
Continue to call us for one thing.
Well,
I'm not trying, but
After the
secondly,
fifth time, I gave up.
right. So oftentimes, we have to look at on a case-by-case issue. I don't know what the situation is, so I'll be more than happy to take down the information, look at it, and maybe get back to you specifically on what the situation is. But I can tell you that oftentimes the process of enforcement and compliance can take a long time. It could take up to years, depending on the cooperation of the property owners, and what level of cooperation we receive really determine how fast we can resolve an issue. But there's a due process that we have that we need to start with notification, and then from there, from which point we've carried forward to citations. Many cases where we have recalcitrant property owners that doesn't want to take action, we have to go to court. And that process takes a long time. It takes a lot of resources that we don't necessarily have. So when I say 20, 40, 60, 80 hours, it could go up much more and spread over a period of 12 months. So absolutely right, from a point of a citizen's perspective, from your perspective, we haven't done anything. But in the background, there's a lot of those things that we have to do in order for us to get to the point where we get compliance. Sometimes we get lucky where we identify an issue with the property owner, they take care of it, address the issue. There are times when it takes 5-6 years. I'm not kidding. In my experience, not here necessarily, but in working with code enforcement, there's been a situation that goes on for 5-6 years because of all the legal step that we have to go through in order for us to basically take the hammer and swing the hammer.
No, I fully appreciate your position on that. And in light of that, can you kind of give us the escalation for a property owner? What is the actual process? Obviously, you go out there and say, hey, this isn't right, you need to take care of it. They ignore it, then what?
I'm going to give you a 30,000-foot level, and if necessary, I can ask Elvo to go in. But once an issue has been identified or brought up to attention, we have to go there and verify. We have to go look and see if we observe the same conditions. If we don't observe the same condition, we can't address it. And depending on what kind of situation it is, then we have to go back. Oftentimes, it's not just a physical element like a building, right? A non-permitted construction. It could be someone parking on the lawn, right? So we have to observe it. Once we observe it, then we have to go through the process of issuing them a notice of violation indicating to the property owner that there's been a violation, you need to address it. If they don't address it, we issue a citation, escalate to a fee.
What's your time frame on all this?
Alvaro?
But that would depend on the actual violation, depending on what it is. So, as an example, let's go on with the projected aspect that you say regarding some type of hardscape, the extent of a driveway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the driveway is only directed in front of your garage, but some folks have this where they extend hardscape and finish so that we can get everything apples to apples, right? So depending on the time it takes to remove some of that, right? well, now we're on, it's part of the driveway, but maybe part of the sidewalk, part of the access way, right? Then at that point, it depends, it might take 30 days, and then we follow up, right? But we do average quite a bit of calls, so then we prioritize dangerous conditions, in this case, like Metro X, which is the focal point of the meeting, like homeless aspects. So those kind of complaints, those critical for certain neighborhood aspect, may default to a little lesser type of response time, right? But we'll do it, within, depending 14 days, 30 days to comply, and then go back 2 weeks, $100 fine, go back in a couple of weeks, $200 fine, $1,000. Now, as my executive director said, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go to the city attorney's office to go to court. There might be a determination by the city attorney's office to say, you know what, this is not what the city of Santa Ana wants to spend their city attorney time to go take extended 4 feet yard hardscape, even if it's the more egregious person to that neighbor, to go to court and go before the judge and say, you know what, this person, despite us giving notice to comply, despite giving us multiple fines, if he doesn't pay, it goes to collections, which is a side note. They say, you know what, this is not what we want to take, and waste our time. And I say waste in parentheses, not that we don't think that's critical, because it's a violation of the municipal code, that the judge may not say something very warranted. Because part of our examples, when we talked about, for example, the right-of-way on the railroad, we had to go not once but twice to get inspection warrant because the judge felt that a prima facie case wasn't enough. And probably the only city in the state of California to have done that. And probably the only city in the state of California to be poised to sue Union Pacific, a $6 billion company, right? So when you focus that on limited staff resources, not that we're whining for the folks that know we're criticizing, right? We understand that the yardscape or the yard parker may not be as critical as responding to the quality of life concerns with the homeless aspect, like in the railroads. So we balance that. Commissioner Leo did the description, right, for example, between Anaheim and Santa Ana. And that you can see, I get into it, right, because this is what we do. Santa Ana, 54 square miles. 27.3 square miles. Santa Ana, 54 square miles. 350,000 population, 350,000 Santa Ana's. City Anaheim code enforcement, 38 to 42 people. We're scaling to have 18.
Sorry, how many did you say we
We're
have?
scaling to go.
They're getting.
Today,
they're budgeted for 18.
Yeah,
we have 12 officers and 2
Right.
supervisors for a city of 27 square miles
is
and
Anaheim?
350.
42.
38 to 42.
So just use the number 40, and we're
Right.
18 when they get.
And I say that, sir, because I do take it serious as far as the neighborhood aspects. I hate to come to a meeting and feel that we lost somebody, right? That we weren't as responsive as we should have. Right? As my boss would tell you, and also the community around the record, we operate more as a player coach. I'm not the manager in the office. You see me out in the street. The first 2 warrants were the right of way. When I give I went to court myself. So we prioritize. But as far as the initial process, your initial question is the warning with a reasonable time to comply, followed by 100, 200, 500, 1,000. If it's something more egregious, back, 3-4 years, let's go 3-4 years ago, the cannabis, right? Nobody even thought we would ever beat the illegal cannabis business in Santa Ana. At one point we had 115. We're down to 3. Anaheim can't say that. LA can't say that, right? So because we've been able to focus and prioritize some of the critical components, though, and I say this, sir, with all due respect, I apologize if we failed you on those type of complaints, because we do have the follow-ups. Like when we're talking to Commissioner Johnson on some of the signage complaints, there's stuff that we should be doing, but there's stuff that we have completed, given our staffing level that we prioritize, and especially with Measure X. We didn't wait to, as my boss said, we didn't wait to hire the 2 so we could spread Measure X. We took away what we had, and we focused on homeless right away. That was the key of the stuff that you saw in the presentation.
No, I fully appreciate that. It's, again, from the citizen's perspective, it does become a little bit frustrating. I appreciate that is a focus, but I also appreciate that if the community doesn't rise together, and code enforcement, the broken window syndrome being one of the major issues, nothing's going to change. To your point, we all got to come up together, and if the community doesn't come up, and code enforcement being a critical piece of that, then we're all lost. And as a citizen, if we cannot, and no offense, if we can't get results, we're kind of lost. Because again, you are our resource. So yeah, there you go.
imagine, Alvaro is often torn between residents of Santa Ana. In my case, we had a barking dog, and the case didn't stop until my dog's larynx were torn out by a surgeon. Did Alvaro want to spend his time prosecuting that case? I don't know if it was you, Alvaro. But did he want to spend his time? No. But the fireman who slept during the day behind me wanted him to spend his time on that case. So often Alvaro doesn't get to choose the cases he wants. He has a fireman who wants to sleep during the day, and he has me who owns a dog. It's tough. I mean, and it's all quality of life.
Let me switch gears for a second, because one of the things that we as a city, I think, or one of the things as a resident, and I think residents and businesses alike, is, Min, how much money do you need to upgrade the planning department so people don't have to spend half a day going through the process? I can go to Irvine and go to Anaheim and get an app, I can get it, find out, I'm done. I know we've invested in hardware, it's the software that we need. And I think to myself, if we upgraded the technology in that department, might free up a few extra bodies that you could train to do code enforcement. So that's what I'm asking. And because we all know the type of people that live in this city, they're hardworking people. Sometimes you can't get to the counter before 5, right? This is a broken record for you, right? You're hearing the same thing. So what is it, if you needed money from Measure X, how much would it be to do that so that Mr. Gonzalez, who has a business, who's trying to redo his house, can work with the planning department either through his phone or whatever it is, so he doesn't have to come down half a day at the counter. He's in and out in 20 minutes. And that's the question I'm asking, because we're all in customer service. You guys are in customer service, so are we. So what is it that you would need? Because right now I've heard we need more code enforcement. Makes total sense to us. What do you need on the front end? Especially since we got all these granny flats and these people that are trying to redo their homes and add a rental. What is it that you could use for Measure X if you put a dollar number on it to upgrade the front end so that people don't have to come to the counter so often and spend time there that takes away from other stuff they're doing?
I would respond to that by kind of looking at it from two perspectives. There are one-time dollars that we have to invest into upgrading our technology, upgrading the equipment for our staff so that they can work. I hate to use this term because it's overused, work a little smarter, a little more efficient, and use less time to look for things, but more time to be able to deliver our service. We can also get information through electronic format that would allow for our public to get information a lot quicker. We can use our technology to allow developers, homeowners to get applications online completed and come to us. So that's the front end, and we are looking at that. And the city right now is looking at what we call a land management system, where it does permitting, it does case management, even does code enforcement type issues, so that our staff can access information all that much quicker, get it back out all that much sooner. And I believe that's about a $3.5 million.
So $3.5 million. If here we go again. Measure X is a long-term deal, right? So if we were to, in our recommendation report, said on the front end we don't want folks having to wait so long at the counter, and we would recommend to the council that, hey, this project, if you did it, would save employees time, maybe even a reallocation of where employees are, and save the residents a whole bunch of time.
Right. So I don't want to say we're asking for that, because
I didn't say you were asking for it.
But we are on progress.
Okay.
So we're working with, since a year and a half ago, we have made upgrading technology a priority. Our staff is working with IT, is with finance, working with Public Works to upgrade the technology package together. So we're in process of doing that. How it's funded, that's really something that finance and our city manager will have to deal with in the city council, but they are funding it. So we are getting the prioritization of getting money to where we think can help us make more efficient. So that's on the technology tool parts. We can use more vehicles, but what does that mean? We also need more staff, because a lot of what we do on that widget is just service. In order to service quicker, We need more people. We need more, better equipment so that we can do our job faster. That's it, more people. So it's a balance of how do you create a acceptable level of service to a residents that feel that they're getting the service and the responsiveness that you're able to get. Responsiveness comes in the form of calling back. It could just be saying, I'm looking at your plan, it's still being looked at, we haven't finished yet. So we try to encourage our staff to do that in the face of not having enough people to say, we're going to get this turned around in 7 days. If we have more staffing and we can get to that ability, that'd be great. But, we're looking at a soft service model to where if we can't get to you, we'll let you know where you stand in line so that someone is paying attention to your project and not just kind of stay radio silence on activities.
Okay.
We encourage the same thing for the code enforcement division. Oftentimes, we can't respond back to you because of our investigation process that we are not able to disclose certain type of information. So a lot of times we take in the information, but we're unable to kind of check back and then give you some status update. But where we can, we do. So beside the technology enhancement, we also can use more personnel in building. We can use more personnel in planning. Again, planning is a process where it's not an overnight process. You take in plans, you review plans. There is the function of the entitlement process where you have to take project through the public hearing process, and that takes months, right? Many hours of work put into place.
Sure.
So it would be ideal if you have separate functions that are fully staffed. Right now, our staff is so small, everybody is doing jack of all trades.
Right.
Even though we have advanced planning, we have current planning, our advanced planners and our current planners are kind of crisscrossing and helping each other out because they provide the same information. In larger cities, you would have separate functions where they truly are separate and they get to do the advanced planning portion, and then the current planning gets to focus on servicing the public at the counter, processing application, processing permits with our building department. We, at the building department side, have also looked at contracting out some of the services that we have. Plan check review, looking at how to speed it up by going out and have a bench list of
Sure.
companies that we can send it out to. But that also is a level of cost that's incurred to the applicant. If the applicant is willing to take in that cost, we can send it out. Otherwise, when we do it in-house, for the last year, I think we had 3 plan checker because we had attrition of retirement and also people leaving the city, and we have to recruitment. Recruitment, I can tell you, has been difficult in all areas of the city. I'm not just going to complain about myself,
Sure.
but I think the job market out there is really good.
Sure.
And to attract a really competent, dedicated employee is not an easy thing, especially when the job market is so hot and is so competitive. So I can tell you that with code enforcement, we have had 2 recruitments where we felt the officer or the level of the applicant applying to the city was not up to our standard, and where we have to go back out and re-recruit. That takes time.
Yeah.
Our HR department, is charged with
Sure.
hiring for all of the city, and so, they can only work with one priority recruitment at a time. So that process in itself also creates the extended period of when and how we can staff.
What was do you know, you probably don't know this off the top of your head, pre-recession, what the size of the planning department was by staff?
So this is through,
So it'd be like
just hearing the
2008?
history, I think we have doubled the size.
Double the size, which would be how?
Right now, we have about 10 planners, 10 plus planners. I think we're up to 30.
So
20
so
plus.
it's pre-recession up to 30?
Yes.
Yeah, so PPA,
Right.
probably the whole agency, we probably had 120 staff, including planning, code enforcement, and
Yes,
building.
and right now, we're at about 60.
Right, probably
So you're half the size.
Right.
Yes.
Post-recession,
Right.
after we've had a 10-year run of a good year economic run.
And what the recession taught a lot of government administrator to do is do more with less, because you don't want to hire people and having to let them go.
Understood.
It's a very hard process for all of us at every level. I went through that myself.
Sure.
Having to let people go. So what we tend to do is look at the most conservative way of hiring, and where we can utilize technology, where we can potentially utilize third-party services. We try to do that rather than creating what you would consider a structural obligation,
Yes. No,
which eventually becomes a structural deficit.
No, that part I get. What we've been trying to do with all the departments is pre-recession, what it looked like, Parks and Recs, for example.
Yes.
Like decimated. It happened at the county when the bankruptcy occurred. It happens, right? But the thing is that the quality of services get hit as well at that point. And then all of us are trying to figure out, okay, well, we have this newfound money the voters gave us. We don't want it to all go to the same thing. We got to fix the deficit, and that was the discussion that we've had up here. And now we're asking you, okay, what I've heard tonight is more code enforcement. You're getting some, but more would be helpful. And in planning, there is an investment being made, but more bodies to speed up the process would be helpful.
Same thing with building. We can.
No.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that we asked the police, how much more do you, if you had enough, if you had the officers you were requesting, how much would that improve response time? We didn't get an answer. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you guys at least have a plan. You can say this is what's going to happen. The police did not fare well, at least in my eyes, in that discussion, because it's like, hey, we told the voters we were going to improve response times, but you're telling us you'll get back to us with it. What do you mean you're going to get back to us with it? You just got a big fat contract. So, I mean, those are the questions. We're trying to set baselines so that we know. And what you're telling us, highly functional department at this point would be approximately 35 to 40 code enforcement officers and more planners. 10, 15 planners more would help you speed up the process, right? I mean, if I were to put numbers, just generic numbers out there.
That would be the dream.
No,
That would be
but-
the Cadillac.
but that's what
in
we-
terms of what would be functional, I think, is getting us to about, in the code area, at least in the 20s,
Okay.
right? In the planning division, we can probably use another 5 to 6 professional technical planners at all levels.
That gives us numbers to work with, because as we make our recommendations, it's not just about public safety in the city. It's about the other pieces that people care about. You know, I mean, I've been in the city long enough to know when Latino Health Access used to come and argue about the number of liquor licenses in the census tract. There's too many in these census tracts. Nobody needs to live in a neighborhood that's gang infested. I don't care who they are. So, I mean, those are the things that we grapple with.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is the voters gave us 60 million. How do we spend it? And where's it going to? So that's why we're asking the questions. Go ahead.
I have one more question. Correct me please let me know if it falls under your functions as well. When it comes to, great percentage of residents of the city are renters, whether it's mobile home, whether it's apartment complex, thinking, created a mess here. Those that fall under code enforcement and complaints on housing conditions, maintenance of the apartment, and secondly, how many folks do you have assigned for that?
Right now, I currently have 4 people assigned just to rental inspections.
Okay.
And we average literally between 250, 300 inspection attempts on rental properties, only rental properties.
Okay.
And that includes single-family dwelling all the way to multi-unit, 200, 300 units.
So is there a need for more code enforcers from that end?
There's always a need for more.
Yes, but again, it goes back to balancing it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have 12 people. So to the extent that I prioritize, so I prioritize the quote. So I aside from my 12 to the quote, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then the next Monday, Tuesday, you know what?
let's forget quote, now let's go do a strategic plan because I need some of the cannabis involvement. Boom, here's my two people going to cyber cafes, illegal casinos, and commercial aspects. But because I have a commitment on the rental inspections, literally I have 4 people strictly assigned just to rentals. Either they respond to complaints or they proactively go make the inspections. And that's what we average right now, 250, 300. Now, do we need more? The answer would be yes, because ask me then, how many rental apartment units we have? Okay, we're averaging 34,000. So why would I need, if I'm gonna inspect 34,000 in 1 year, and my inspectors average 8 inspections a day. That includes visit, inspections, write-up, notification to the property owner, notification to the tenants, and then coming back and sending that, and then doing inspections. Okay, if I do any inspection, you start doing the math, it's like 20 people just to do it in 1 year for the city of Santa Ana. Is that a functional aspect? Is it practical? Maybe not. But it gives you the idea that how we're thinking, right? That, as Commissioner Leo says, we have an idea where we want to go. The fact that I set aside 25-40% of my code enforcement efforts that I have, specifically to rental, tells you my commitment to rentals. Precisely because, like you said, we have this high rental aspects. What did SCAG say in the recent 2019 information? 81% of houses in SCAG built before 1979. Right? Density-wise, the average county is 3.5, we're at 4.9. That tells you that we, as far as planning and building, code enforcement, and the executive director, we're bringing that as more of a focal point. So I put 4 to prep and I put 2 to code. That leaves me what? Another 6 to do exactly. But, we do have a plan. We're hiring, like I said, 2 additional code enforcement. We're hiring 3 additional, we call the entry level, the code enforcement associate, so that we can distinguish between the more evolved type of inspection. We have to do inspection warrants, notifications, sometimes the follow-up that takes a little bit more time, versus what I call the outside uglies, the yardscape, the inoperable vehicle, as Commissioner Leo said, the storage of the outside furniture. So they don't have to make that contact if people are not there. We can send it to the mail with that quick approach, like the patrol versus the detective type of approach. Again, letting you know that we have an idea where we want to go.
I appreciate that commitment where you're going, and definitely, hopefully, this Measure X dollars can help to increase that capacity. Because speaking to mobile home residents, and especially in the Sullivan area, you have a lot of folks that have complaints, but also harassment from landlords about rent complaining.
And one of the things when we go proactive, you avoid that sense of harassment from the landlords, because they pay into the rental surcharge, right? They understand, there's an understanding that the inspections will come. So we those are the ones where we don't wait for the complaint. We notify the inspector, we're going to be in your property in 2 weeks, and we send a letter, and we send a listing of here's what we're looking inside the property, here's what we're looking outside of the property. So there's no gotcha moment, right? So that's the thing we're trying to avoid. So it prevents that sense of tenants feeling unable to complain or afraid to complain. It allows us to have that flexibility. Now, just to clarify, because you mentioned the mobile parks, that in the city of Santa Ana, we don't have the jurisdiction, right? That'll be the state of California. And I think we just received an email. They'll be coming to Southern California, Santa Ana, probably next month. But that's not something that we have under our jurisdictions. That's strictly the state of California.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Quick question, how many building inspectors do we have? And are they divided commercial, residential, or are they both?
They all do different inspections. So right now, 4, 5, 6 inspectors.
And they do commercial, residential?
Commercial, residential, industrial.
Thank you.
So I have a few questions. Thanks for coming tonight. It's very insightful. I'm going to start with my big picture question and then dial down a little bit. But how many people? How many people? And also, what does that equate to dollars? We're coming up into a budget season. Are you asking for additional in your upcoming budget request?
We're still working on the budget. We haven't finalized that yet. We are asking for additional staffing. Yeah, I don't have the final number yet. So
Can you give me a range? Is it a couple or is it?
Well, we're asking for incremental increases in terms of staffing. And I believe we have submitted, I don't want to say,
Sure.
but.
So when I hear incremental, I hear, relatively small.
Small numbers, yeah.
Not this, and that's why I was afraid you're going to say what I thought you would say. Because on one hand, I'm hearing you indicate, hey, we need to get, multiple people into your multiple smaller departments within your, inside of CBA, or, I'm sorry, PBA.
Right.
So I guess my bigger question is, why don't you guys ask for what you need? And what the residents want? Because I tell you what, there's other people that go to the table and they ask loud. So why are other departments not asking loudly for what you've told us what you need.
I can tell you from past experience that you're probably not heard.
Right.
So,
Okay.
it's not that it hasn't been asked, but it's probably not heard loud enough.
Okay. Fair enough. I would encourage you to, unless you ask for what you really want, that you're never going to get it. Okay, and especially with a department like code enforcement that is relatively tied into quality of life, and I would say highly that since we've had a downturn, the level of services has decreased over the past. There's a lot of pent up.
Absolutely.
Enforcement needs.
Absolutely.
And so, it's kind of like the roads at some point where it's like, hey, the roads are the code need, enforcement needs are so great that it's like you have to have a spike to be able, and then a decline to get to normal. And
I would tell you, just like policing and crime, there will always be code enforcement issue out there. It's how fast can you get to it and how responsive you can get back to the person that provided the complaint. That, I think, would help with the level of service in terms of getting, you feel that something is being responded to. And to do that, we need additional folks to be able to get out there and be able to do proactive, not just reactive, but also the proactive stuff where, you call and you said, where are you on it, right? And that would be ideal, but I don't, for a city of our size with our staff, that is not going to happen.
Right.
Well, I can guarantee it's not going to happen unless you ask for it.
Exactly.
And obviously we're not all privy to what's being asked for, and then and then massaged down and to a more realistic level. So I don't, I hope that you are pushing for the residents of Santa Ana, because I think the residents are wanting, great facades down the street, to where you don't have your most recent code enforcement, like I was talking about, every single of these shops that you guys, that they get busted, there's guaranteed more than 25% of their windows that are covered, which is an obvious code violation. Now, that's not like anyone's going to jail for covering their 25% or anything like that, but every single one of these has that issue. Not every single business that has over 25% is an issue, but all of the ones that are an issue have that particular code violation. And until we get the staff to be able to address that on a proactive basis, then you're going to continue to have residents essentially just say, it's just how it is. And that's not how it should be. That's not how I don't think anyone wants it to be. And so I would encourage you to fight hard for that. Going into if you want to respond, you can. If not, as more of a commentary, go ahead.
Just to clarify, so that we are in the process of completing our hiring process for 2 code enforcement officers, and finishing this fiscal year and going to the next, we get hired at least 3 entry-level code enforcement associates. So we currently have, between closing this fiscal year and the upcoming one, approved for 5 openings that we're trying to hire. Just to clarify.
And so, but how long have we been looking for those 2?
Yeah, this is.
I'm sorry, how long?
This fiscal
A year. So how many police officers did we hire in a 6-month period?
50? It's okay.
Okay, I would say that if we are not able to hire 2 code enforcement officers in half the time that another department is able to go staff up 25 times the amount of people in half the time, so that's a 50 times multiple, then we are not putting our resources, and I know it's not your guys' decision, but you guys hopefully need to advocate more for your department, because there's a big disparity there. It should not take any business, any municipality to hire 2 people a year.
Well, like I said, the quality of the applicant is something that we were very surprised with. We have applicants applying for the job, but they would not qualify, didn't have the capacity that we needed. We needed folks to come in and be able to start, running right away and not necessarily have to, we don't have time to train them up, so.
Well, if they're entry level, I would hope you're training them.
Well, no, these are not entry level, these are code enforcement
Oh, got it,
officers.
okay.
They're not meant to be entry positions.
Got it.
Well, is the issue the pay or what? Because the police got the pay, so they
Well,
got the
I can
people.
tell you that from my experience working with other cities, code enforcement is a unique area of work. It's not a professional field to where you actually have schools out there that are training folks to be code enforcement officer. They're usually people who are looking at a law enforcement career, didn't quite make it, and then, got back into looking at other ways of an entry-level type looking position. So what we're doing is that we're actually having staff go to local colleges, Santiago College, to help kind of create programs where we would be cultivating a professional code enforcement office type career.
Wouldn't it make more sense to look for people that have the building trades, the building inspector?
Well, then the building inspector have a
could
different
you-
level of pay.
No, I fully appreciate that.
So you're looking at law enforcement, yes, you're absolutely right.
Because to me, law enforcement is not the answer to, and quite frankly, the term code enforcement, I think, is kind of reprehensive to some people. I think code compliance would be better, or community preservation would be better.
No, they actually have to go enforce the code. They have to have a
No, I
PCA
fully
32.
appreciate that,
Right.
but so does a building inspector. I used to be a building inspector, so you do enforce code. I mean, code is codified language. So to me, it's not so much enforcement,
Well, and just to clarify, and so you're not correct, right? But what we're trying to say is that it's actually a mixture of both. The reality is we have a building inspector for more than 50, 60 years. Yeah, you didn't have code enforcement, right? And so when we say the applicant lacks, we look for a balance of pseudo police powers, because we require the PCA 32, the powers of arrest, knowing how to do an inspection warrant, knowing how to do payment, which is not what a typical building inspector does. And let's be even more succinct, not something even though part of the administration of the code, it's not done by the building inspector. I can't tell you how hard it is for a building official to pull a certificate of occupancy from an approved business or disconnect utilities. And if you have that experience, you would agree with me. Okay, that's a typical hard. It's not like in the movies where you say the building official closes his building. It's not by the office of the fire marshal. In that situation, which we're very unique, and so what my boss is trying to say is that we expect our inspectors, code enforcement officers, to have that capability. To have the access and the pseudo police powers, as by the health and safety code, it's not a building safety issue, by the building code and the police powers. That's just a minimum mandatory for us.
So they're part inspector, they're part legal training, and they're part police officer.
well, again,
There's
it's,
a lot of expectation more than just building inspector. If you say, can a building inspector go into a job? Eventually, but there's a lot more to code enforcement than just inspecting and saying, oh, that's wrong. It's also a process of how do you address that issue? How do you establish the legal parameters for you to, eventually, you approach every case as if you're going to probably have to go to court.
no, I fully appreciate, but again, is the issue that the pay isn't high enough? Is that what's keeping, we seem to be getting a yes there.
We have a survey, so we're going to see where in the market we are. But I feel that our pay is fair. It may not be the highest, probably it's not the lowest either. It's just that the job market out there is really good. If you look at out there, the government job market is really good. You can attract applicants, but to attract what we consider a good applicant, quality applicant, is someone we're looking for. When we bring on an employee, it's not the intention, if you don't work out, we're gonna let you go. Our goal is to make sure that when we bring on an employee, we bring on employees that's gonna be here with us and contribute to our success and their success. It's not often we do, but we do let people go because they don't qualify for it. We don't want to have to do that. So the vetting process is something that we take very seriously, and we have to find the right person for the right job.
I do like the approach that you're taking of going to the community college outreach route. I mean, it's clear that there's a shortage of code enforcement folks, and it will be better if folks are locally hired.
Right, so we have staff that teach at, work and teach at local college that talks about code enforcement, and hopefully that will help to stimulate potentially a program for both building code and code enforcement.
That will cost money from the city or from the community college?
No, at the community college is asking some of our staff to go and be teachers and guest speakers.
A couple follow-up questions. So are public right-of-way issues, you spoke quite a bit on the railroads. Where are we at with the Union Pacific Railroad in terms of their 30-day program that they was brought before the council? Can you give did they finish the 30 days? What was the results and what are the takeaways, and was that a work together type process? If you can kind of comment on that.
So, yes and no. So the compliance time had elapsed, right, as far as they coming into the city. I can tell you that they were here last week cleaning the railroads along with the Union Pacific and their own contractor. From the city's perspective,
We already, city manager has sought and obtained a commitment from, and an approval from the city council to start looking at taking legal action, right? So, and it goes back to this type of enforcement and how it takes a little bit long. We don't want it to be transitory. We want the property owner in this situation, Union Pacific, to take responsibility for the property and don't wait for us to notice them, right? So that's where we're at. We're at the point that the city attorney's office is looking into taking legal action.
So would it be safe to say that they did not hold up their end of the bargain on that 30-day commitment that was made?
It would be safe to say that they're not maintaining the property the way they should.
Okay, specifically with the 30-day period of...
The 30 days came and went.
Okay. What about the non-railroad type issues that we see on publicly accessible areas down in that area also? I'm referring to down towards MHA area in South Main by the railroad crossing there. Is that in your guys' purview on the sidewalks and those types of areas also?
Well, specifically with MHA, we are working with the city attorney's office.
Not specific with MHA, because that's a private piece of piece of property. But what about the areas surrounding MHA?
But that is the focal point. If you look at a presentation, primarily on enforcement is on private property. The general code team under the auspices with CDA and the interagency deals with public accessible, the sidewalk, that type of aspect. For us, when we start getting involved, is with the private property owner, and they're taking the due process to make sure that they maintain the property clean. So in other words, we don't distinguish between MHA, Union Pacific, and the Marie Calendar's responsibility to make sure that they maintain the property.
Okay, so I understand now. So your purview is the private property as opposed to the public property, and since it's the Union Pacific is private property, that's why it's covered under your purview.
Planning, code enforcement, it's all related to privately owned properties.
Okay. Is MHA properly zoned right now for the use that it's utilizing the property for?
I think That's the position that we're taking, is that they're not properly zoned.
How did they receive ability to be able to operate under their model if they're not properly zoned?
In our assessment, have transformed over time, from initial, where they were approved to now how we operate.
Okay, obviously, there's been I think a Superior Court filing on that. Were they previously noticed and all those types of other items that you've kind of explained to us?
A lot of this, I'll be more than happy to maybe sit down privately, but I think it's still in the legal process where I don't know how much information I can really divulge
All right, fair
out
enough.
there. But understand that, to answer your question, we are in disagreement with them in terms of whether or not they are operating within the framework of what they were approved for.
All right. I believe that we had volunteer enforcement officers at some point also. Do we still have that program?
No.
When did that program disband?
Actually, it's not so much that it disbanded, we put it on hold as we reviewed some of the processes that were going on. Part of the response that we got, the people involved were actually people associated with the neighborhoods, so it became a little bit of I'm not going to say an issue of conflict, but we're reviewing how we hire volunteers and us in the police department, so we make sure that we do it properly.
Okay, so is it safe to say it's just kind of on a hold for you to kind of review the processes and
Yes.
I think
procedures?
volunteers programs are great, but they don't always meet the intended purpose.
Okay,
Right.
fair enough. All right. Again, I mean, if you want to give us a number, I'm going to give you another opportunity to do so in terms of what, because we're trying to, I know how much it costs to hire a CPA at my CPA firm. Okay, I know if I have a need for somebody, I know what to budget for. I have no idea when you say, hey, we need, X number of people, I don't know what that number, what that turns into. So, I mean, if you're, able to kind of give us an idea, I think it would help, because.
Well, what I can do is I just got to send the correct information. Pre-recession, we had a total of 110 personnel in the entire
110?
department,
And you're at 60?
and we're at 72, exact number.
Gotcha.
And just code enforcement alone,
Right.
pre-recession, we had 22 personnel. Today, 22 code officers. Today, we're funded for 14, but we have 12.
Gotcha. So incremental in both spots, especially planning on the front end, as long as they continue with the investment in technology, should get us at least functional, and not long waits and like other things. And then code enforcement, any increment beyond 2 would be good. All right. Appreciate it, guys.
And then to answer, it's 8% of the city that's commercial.
8% of the city
Yes.
that's commercial property.
Commercially zoned.
Commercially
property.
zoned.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm not the chair, but I don't know if there's people that want to speak specific to this item that are in the, or if it was on a different item.
Actually, we have somebody that's going to just speak public comment, and we're going to deviate from our business calendar. We're going to go right to public comments, so they have the opportunity to speak before it's too late, and then we'll get back to Catherine. So, Chris Schmidt?
Good afternoon, community members, city staff. My name is Chris Schmidt. I've been sitting here the whole time listening to you, just shaking my head because I agree with everything that you're saying. The level of service and quality of life in our city, it seems to be, when it comes to staffing level, we're always told we need the minimum. And I don't think that's no longer acceptable, seeing as we have the highest sales tax rate in Orange County. So I've been sitting here shaking my head with you, agreeing with everything you said. Once again, my name is Chris. I serve on the city's Environmental Transportation and an Advisory Committee. We oversee the city streets and our city trees. We had our meeting in this this room earlier this week, and we fall under the Director of Public Works. So as Public Works is putting together their proposed budget for next fiscal year, we asked them, how much money do you need to fix our city streets? And they said, we need for next year $20 million. Well, how much have you identified? $14 million. So there's a $6 million budget deficit. And when I asked, well, where could that money come from? They said from grants, from this, gas tax revenue, M2 funds, general fund budget. When I read the language of the Measure X ballot measure, one of the items it said is fixing streets. From my understanding, $0 are being spent on fixing streets. I'm here today to tell you the same thing that I told my ETAC members. I'm asking you to reach out to the city council members that appointed you, make them aware that we need money to fix our city streets, make them aware of any other budget request. I think what happens is we sit in these meetings and we talk to city staff, and the council member that appointed us doesn't necessarily know that there are things that we would like to see done. When I mentioned Measure M2 funds, those are funds that come from OCTA to fix our local street and roads. Last March, a year ago, OCTA voted to make City of Santa Ana ineligible to use Measure M2 funds. Luckily, the city manager has reached out to OCTA and they've come to an agreement. OCTA gives our city between $7 and $8 million every year to fix our local city streets and roads. From my understanding, our city has to match that funds. That fund has to come from the general budget. That's in talking to somebody from OCTA. So when the city says, oh, capital improvements or grants and M2 and gas tax revenue, I don't believe that's true. We could allocate some of our general fund budget to fix this, and I was hoping some of the Measure X funds could be used. Again, Public Works says they have a $6 million budget deficit. So I'm hoping maybe we could, your committee, you guys speaking to your city council member, could help our prioritize this, because I believe this should be a priority. The Bristol Street widening project has been going on for 29 years. They told me they couldn't even give me an estimate of when it would be completed because they need money. So I'm here today as also a committee member. If you guys could reach out to your city council members, make them aware that we need funds to fix our city streets. We shouldn't wait on M2 grants, gas tax revenue. The city's already talking about issuing bonds against future gas tax revenue. We have to pay interest on top of that. So every time you go to the pump, you pay 25 to 30 cents in sales tax or gas tax fees. Now they want to tax us again on that. So if you could, please reach out to the city council member that met you. Please get some of this Measure X funds, at least $6 million to Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other public comments? Nope. I guess, Catherine, it's your turn.
Thank you. So I think we're at agenda item number 4, which is your quarterly sales tax update. As the committee knows, I do update you by email as to how much we receive each month, but I have just a quick update sheet here for you that basically reiterates what it was that I told you in the last email, that we have collected $47 million. Is that right, Sergio? Yeah. Okay. In the interest of time, does anybody have any questions on the Measure X revenue update? No? Okay. And then if you want to move along to agenda item number 5, I don't know if you're interested in, I have some additional information that I can probably provide you. As far as the comments that were just made about OCTA and streets and such, the city has completed, just to give you an update because you might be interested, this might have piqued your curiosity. The city has completed its audit with OCTA, and it's just a procedural issue to take it to committee and the board at OCTA, and we'll be back into compliance and eligible for money again. The city does receive millions of dollars for streets that are programmed. They're already programmed for very specific street projects. The city does have a maintenance of effort requirement that's roughly around 7.7 million?
Yes.
Yeah, 7.7 million a year that we need to spend for right-of-way maintenance. Now, that can include anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be the actual pavement itself. It can be striping the streets, street sweeping, anything that's right-of-way maintenance. From what I understand, we think that we have preliminary information that our maintenance of effort requirement is going to go up for next year. And so we probably do need to program some additional budget money to meet that maintenance of effort threshold. I think that we would need to program at least another million or so.
Yeah, 1 to 2. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 to 2 million in order just to have enough budget to meet that maintenance of effort requirement. So that might be of interest for you. I don't know.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure. Mhm.
On the street sweeping type stuff, do we pay for street sweeping through our,
You do
through
have
our
some
garbage or sanitation?
Yeah, that was a poor example because you
Okay.
do have some property related fees that pay for street sweeping.
So, I mean, are we funding that, are we counting that twice, or in the street, or is that just a poor choice of example?
No, that was a poor choice of
Okay.
example on my part. I was just coming up with right-of-way maintenance type things off the top of my head, and that is one, but that one is paid from a different source of money. Okay, so how would the committee like to proceed with your annual report? Previously, you had prepared some preliminary recommendations, so I resent those to the committee via email. I also sent you our annual report so that you would have it to refer to. And then we do have a draft document here from one of from our vice chair. And so it's up to the committee's pleasure as to how you would like to proceed. And remember, your annual report to the city council can take multiple formats. It could be something like this draft document here. It could be in the form of a letter to the city council, or any other format that you want to use. So,
If it pleases us, since I authored this, do you mind me giving a couple of just quick comments?
Oh, help yourself, man.
So my intention with this is not that this would be, something that we would go through with the council in a meeting, whereas this would be more of the formal report. I think, any type of a presentation should definitely be more of a slide deck type presentation. But I think it's important that we give some detail, because I feel this committee's role, and specifically my role, is not only to, even though we're to advise the city council, and that's what they expect, but I expect of myself to be able to give information to the folks, the residents of our city also. So I think that having a document that someone can actually look at and read, I think would be helpful. This is still a very prelim type item. I might also suggest that there's not a requirement that we have to finish this tonight. This could be something that we could digest, discuss, and think about, and do a special. This committee, I think, is required to have, we have to meet in March to discuss the report. I don't think there's a requirement that we have to finish the report, and you folks can accuse me of using word games on that, but I don't think that there's that would be depriving our what we all feel is probably our duty to be able to present a report to the city council. But I personally would prefer to present a full and accurate report, and if that takes a special meeting to be able to do that in a timely fashion, I'm not not waiting until our next quarterly meeting. That's too long in my opinion. But to be able to get a good headway through this and then finalize it at an agreeable time in the future.
can I provide some comment to
Yes,
that?
please.
We are trying to get a April budget workshop scheduled with the city council. We do not have it scheduled yet, but we're trying to get that. One of the options that we're looking at is April 21st, which is a normal city council meeting day, to bring the council in earlier than their normal council meeting time and hold the budget workshop prior to the regular council meeting. That is one option. So certainly it would behoove you to wrap up your, I think that April budget workshop would be the ideal forum for you to make your recommendations to the city council before they really start budget deliberations in May. So I think for you to get this wrapped up in time for that, if you want to call a special meeting, that's perfectly fine. But just keep in mind that scheduling aspect that you would.
Tax day is moving, so.
Yeah.
The old tax day, April 15th, the day that. Be done.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, as a CPA, are you?
Tax day, I'm telling you, tax day
It
is
doesn't
moving to
matter.
May or June right now.
And the other thing that I would offer to you, and this is just, a staff recommendation to you. You can take it, leave it, do nothing with it. Staff has drafted an annual report that is chock full of information. You certainly have the option to attach that as an exhibit to your item, or refer to it or whatever, instead of restating some of the concepts and ideas. I think that again, this is just my opinion. I've been doing this a while, and I've seen how city council members react to their advisory committees under multiple forms, not just here at City of Santa Ana. And usually, the more succinct and to the point your comments are, the better that they're going to be received, in general. And that's not to say that I'm 100% right on that, but I'm just offering you my professional opinion.
And I would agree with that. And obviously, I mean, this is not a succinct type document, although I think that the goal is to have that summary recommendations at the very end to be succinct. And I would prefer probably to have, personally me, to be able to tell the folks out there, hey, this is, read this document. I mean, if you want to know what the committee thinks, read this document. But presentation to the council, I think, is a different, yes, they can have something like this, but the presentation to council needs to be, easy, quick, those types of things. I am concerned about obviously timing is a concern, which is again why I'd like to try to do it quicker than later, especially because we have community budget workshops coming up, and some of those types of things also.
Well, I think that.
Real quick, though, can I interject? We had gone through kind of a draft that we'd intended to present, and we all still in agreement that was our intentions, or is that changed? This is a great document, but not being a financial person, I'm looking at it going, yeah, that's nice. But I think quite frankly, succinctness is the quickest, easiest, sharpest point we can get across. This is great. It's got a ton of information in it, and I fully appreciate that. I know you put some effort into it, more than I could ever do. But again, in my mind, this is something they get, but in our presentation, it's the pointed stick.
So one of the things that I had emailed Catherine, and I went back and forth just on a couple emails, is I had in my head, and let me say it and you guys figure it out. One of the things that we all were surprised about and continue to be surprised about is that we have these ongoing expenses, and then there's this limited amount of like one-time funding. Mm-hmm. So what you have in a graph, but I really want the graph to basically say 27 million of ongoing expenses and 5 million that's one time.
57 million, let's get the number.
Oh, 57 million, excuse me. So one of the things is that because that goes to one of our recommendations on the last page, which is do one-time spending, don't do recurring spending. The other thing is, and we've heard from all these departments, the other departments in the city have been starved of staff, which go directly to the quality of life of the residents, which is, I believe, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, But that's why the voters voted for the tax.
Well, but that's-
They thought their quality of life was going to improve.
That was the perception.
So what I'd like to pull out and tease out and be succinct with the council is, look, over the course of this year, staff was correct with consultants, we're going to get approximately $60 million. You earmarked $57 million for ongoing expenses. So if we needed to pivot and do something else, we can't, unless you're going to starve a department to do something else. And I think what we've been able to show through all these meetings is that every department, Parks and Recs, housing, planning and building, have an impact on people's quality of life. And by spending it and not prioritizing, we're back to where we started.
Well, to your point, and the lion's share went to safety, and I'm not convinced that has the biggest impact on quality of life. All these other things in my mind, and listening to these people talk, do have a greater impact on the quality of life. As the quality of life rises, the need for the police diminishes. It's that simple. And I see these people, these budgets, they don't have anything to do, anything except do the minimum services, as our citizen pointed out. And that's not what this is all about. This was supposed to increase services. This was supposed to make life better, and I don't see that it's doing that at all. It really isn't, because again, all these people are coming to us and saying, hey, we don't have any money.
So my thought was, because I saw this and I thought this was great, but I wanted to, what can I tease out that really makes a lot of sense? The committee's purpose, we have to say that. We have to say, we thank the council for appointing us and thank the voters for setting up the committee to oversee it. The city staff and our consultants were pretty much on point we think we're going to get 60 million. Looks like we're going to get 60 million. Then the next decision was to spend it all and to fix the structural deficit and then to spend it on recurring things instead of spend it on deferred maintenance and other things that may have improved the quality of life. So that, to me, I'd like to make that point that we as the residents say, okay, you spent some money on public safety, but the rest of it involves the quality of life of the residents, and that's why we believe the residents approved the tax. Not because we thought that the lion's share should go to public safety. There's other pieces in this city to improve the quality of life. When I remember the lady from Parks telling us, well, if we just improve the bathrooms, right, and put some cameras up.
Well, lights.
It'll make it safer for the residents. Well, that's a quality of life thing, because we do have parks. But people are saying, let's build another park. So we're going to build another park with inadequate lighting.
With the same issues. Well, that's to my point, is all these other issues raise the quality of life. You cannot police your way out of this situation, and that's what is the utmost frustrating thing to me.
So if we were to think about, I know you're asking us, should we do a special? I think if we could agree upon a certain number of slides and like topics of slides, I think we have the pieces between what staff's got and what we have to put it together. And I don't know if it's just 4 or 5, but I think the one point that we all took away was that recurring expenses is not the way you run your household. We don't run our houses like that. We fix the bathroom if the bathroom needs to be fixed. I don't let the water keep running, right? So we have an issue about recurring expenses. We believe city staff was on point with revenue, which is great. And then our priorities are, look, it's the quality of life things. And the argument we'll get, well, public safety, can't do anything without public safety. Not true. You can lift things up. By that, you can all boats rise if you fix the little things.
If you
the
fix
broken
the
window
base,
theory,
everything
you don't have
comes
to,
up. That's the point.
And so, to me, when you hear the other part, right, the economy, we've had a 10-year run in the economy, right? They're having trouble finding employees like everybody else. Well, if that's the case, quality of life should be going up.
Chairman Leo, so when I'm a simple
Not
guy.
the chairman, I'm just
I'm part of the department. Commissioner.
He's the unofficial chairman.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, I'm not the unofficial chairman.
Well,
I'm just the sucker that's going to read the thing.
Just kidding.
So, I'm listening. I 100% agree. I think that if we're going to decide on something, though, I think that the decision is what's the access of our presentation. I don't think it should be, because of these reasons, the quality of life would improve. I think the statement is the quality of life will improve when expenses are identified.
Yes.
You know, the budget is focused on these areas, and this is the benchmark of where we're at today and where we
Yeah.
want to be.
Agreed.
Okay.
I don't,
Okay.
I don't disagree with you. We have to point out that as residents, we did our job. The voters approved the tax, and now us up here, we're lucky enough to find what was not happening. And now we're like, hey, we'd like to see some of these things happen.
Yeah, I'm just trying to simplify the idea of what Chairman Keith said was, something simple. I'm the kind of person that loves to eat up this kind of data.
Right.
I'll
I
eat that up,
understand
and I think there's a lot of people that prefer or appreciate the amount of effort is made to put something together succinct that has information that you can look up and reference. But I also understand how important it is to tell the story, to be able to go in there and basically give an elevator pitch to our city council members for them to understand that as a commission, what we're trying to do is, and we believe we have influence on the matter. What we're trying to do is report back to our fellow citizens that the quality of life that you voted for these dollars at this point is not being met unless we, identify the expenses that should be tighter, identify how the benchmark is, and where we believe the money should be going from this point forward. I think those three things, as the axis is quality of life, is going to stir the discussion, and then the details are in there in the document.
I think also there's value in explicitly saying where it shouldn't go anymore. I think this is my first meeting, and I'm very surprised about and catching up with all the notes and catching up with like all the things that how the committee has been doing the work, and it's quite extensive. Is that clearly public safety is not where the money should be spent, and I think that
Not all the money should be spent.
Not all the money.
The lion's share.
Yeah.
The lion's share of the money. I think we've all been surprised at how well the city's been running with so few people.
Yeah.
But we all recognize the deficiencies in the department, and now we're trying to figure out how do we best communicate that deficiency to the city council.
Well, I think we all agree that the broken window theory is something that we support, and yes, we agree that public safety is very important, but it's these ancillary programs that really make up the difference of culture in the city that are going to be tangible benefits to the residents.
Well, in the police department, and I've talked to Claiborne and all Paulson, all these guys, they fully appreciate the broken window syndrome. They fully are behind that, and they understand it. But, they're reluctant to let go of the money, and I fully appreciate that. I mean, it's just any company you're in, nobody wants to let go of their budget. But in my mind, and given that we do have input, unfortunately, we don't have the authority, but this money can go in other places to do more good.
That's what's going back to my point where Commissioner Leo and I appreciate your comments. I think we do have to be very explicit on where most of the money shouldn't be going. Because when voters are going to read or residents are going to read this, they're going to want to know what has been the context about what our opinion is on it. I do feel there's some value also in having some type of, not an extensive report, right, but some type of report that is nicely done.
Sure.
Well, I think this is, again, the real sharp pointed presentation, and given this also, because this has got a ton of information in it, there's a lot of effort in here.
And you're going to get the city's annual report too.
Yeah, but this is, to Tim's credit, I mean, there's a lot of work here, and there's a lot of information here. I'm a simple guy. To me, a lot of this is over my head. You know what I'm saying? I like things simple to the point, and I think we need to get in there and make our point. And again, reiterating what you were saying about how we were surprised where the money went, and we're surprised where the money isn't going. I think those are the key points. Get that across and let it sit.
Yeah. I agree that simplicity is nice. But at the same time, guys, this is not simple stuff. That's the this is we have a $316 million general fund, of which this is about just shy of 20%. This is not simple stuff. If I feel that from a finance perspective, when you have an enterprise like that, there's got to be some digging in. And and I expect our council to dig in a bit. And so I don't necessarily think, you're spending an hour and going over this report in front of them, but I mean, I hope at least half of them would dig in. I mean, and get, and a lot of this stuff is not, it's just plagiarized from, other stuff, but at the same time, and it also allows, to be able to provide something for people, the folks to read also. Now, I'm a finance guy, so I read this stuff, I write this stuff all the time, and so it makes sense to me, but but it's complicated. There's and so they need to dig in. If they're not willing to dig in, then they shouldn't really be commenting on the budget in general, but and defer to Catherine's expertise on everything on this, but that's not necessarily her role either. But yeah, so in my mind, it's a pointed presentation, and followed by a more in-depth actual report. That when someone asks me, "Hey, where did the money go?" Here you go.
And it does add more credibility to the role of this commission where we issue an actual report that people can dig into.
I think it flows great, Tim. That at the end of the day, you're bringing up what I think people are interested in the departmental updates. When you add in a takeaway, it really is back to Commissioner Leo's point of quality of life, because each one of these bullet points for police department, Parks and Rec, Public Works, community development could always go back to that one thing that we want to be able to convey, is that we're interested in making sure this community improves, and they get what they expected out of the measure. The other portion of it, I think it's a great way to be able to your sunset planning. This is where I think technology is a huge bullet point right there, because I'm a big fan of technology. Those one-time costs to be able to get software and hardware, whatever it may be, to support Public Works, to support the different, staff, making sure that they have the proper equipment to be able to communicate and interact with each other and be efficient. I think that's a great place to put it. And then the summary of recommendations. Ultimately, yeah, there's a little bit of numbers that if you want to, you could dig into, but the narrative is simple.
And just to be clear, like on the upcoming budget, these graphs are just graphs that I grabbed to be able to, just from a discussion point, and I've talked to multiple people on this other snippet of on the last page of Planning for the Sunset, where there's the highlight. This is something that Director Downs put in the mid-year budget update in mid-February that that just flew by. Who knows if they even read this, but hey, if a recession hits, guys, we're looking at $5 million first year, and then another $2 million. So that's $7 million.
That's a normal recession.
That's right, and that's normal. So yet alone you have a February 2020 when everyone's buying all their disposable items, and our sales tax revenue is going to go up, and you're going to plan for that, and it's not going to happen the months after. But when something like that is put in, and
so it's mid-March. Mid-April, we got to be done. It's got to be in the you're hoping the 20 something, right? 21st. You're hoping the 21st, maybe later, depending on schedules. So, if we do need to have another meeting, but I think that if we had, the basics of the things are here. The question is, can we do it in a 5-page PowerPoint? Can we do it in 5 slides? That's succinct, and then attach the complex report. Because to me, Tim, you wrote it out here, maintain effective 911 response. We didn't get an answer when we asked them.
Nope.
Retain firefighters and police officers. They said it was going to happen. I assume it has, but we don't know what the contracts and how many are going to retire. Addressing homelessness. I think the city's spending money to address homelessness. Is it enough? Probably not enough, but they're addressing it and they're battling the county. Fixing streets. Well, we found out no general fund money is going to general streets. And now we think to keep measure 2, you said an additional $1 million or 2? You don't know. Okay? Maintaining parks, we know what they want. I mean, these are the things that the council at the end is going to decide how they want to spend their money. Youth and senior services, right? So how we communicate that in 5 PowerPoints, which is basically, the first one is what Measure X does, the oversight's role. You can do that in 1 slide. That's quick. The second slide is revenues, right? I mean, revenues in general projected, and then I think we should highlight, because by the time we get there, we're going to be in full-blown coronavirus. So let's say recession, just guesstimate of 5 million, right? And then you can do a slide that shows what was approved in recurring, one time, right? And then to that summary page of, this is what we think.
The one time.
Yeah, focus on the one-time expenses. Focus on the other parts of Measure X. You guys, look, if I'm the council member and this tax is going to run for a while, all right, I made my commitment to public safety. Now the other piece of it has to be taken care of. Because we raised public safety up this time. The next few years, the other departments have to come up to meet that. You know, and that's not confronting them, that's just saying, look, I understand what you did. You made a commitment to public safety for X number of years. Now the rest of it, you got to take care of. Can't continually keep dumping extra money into it when they come back in 2 years and say, oh, I want more. Say, look, there's your budget, deal with it. We got to deal with the rest of this and raise everything else up.
But to your point, in one of the first meetings we had, there's no quantifying any of the money that went to the police department as far as 911 response goes and all that. My problem with that is you give them the money and they say, well, yeah, we didn't make it.
Well, that's, but that
Well, you know what I'm saying? Now,
right, but at the end of the day, that's, the council has to, unfortunately, that's where the council has to say, hey, look, the citizens asked for a baseline, we got it, and baseline didn't improve. I mean, next year, you and I are going to be able to ask the police, so did response time improve after you got all the money? Is their answer yes or no?
I can tell you, never mind.
But I'm just saying, I mean, that's what's going to happen.
No, I appreciate that, but that was one of the points that we brought up in that, our original slide presentation, that there was no benchmarks for any of these things. The Parks and Rec, same thing,
Right.
X number of trees, how many bathrooms did you improve, what all these kind of, because again, then we're no better than the council in that respect. So here's some more money, guys. You know, yeah, we hear you complaining that you don't have enough money, and we can't do this, you can't do that. So we go, okay, here you go. And assuming that the council takes our recommendations, which I think is something that needs to be explicitly pointed out to the public. And again, they take the money and away they go. And then what quantifiable results do we have again?
That's part of whatever the city's strategic plan is.
But you understand what I'm saying is, okay.
No, we can't enforce it, but all we can do is make the recommendation, right?
I agree, but I'm torn between, again, how do we quantify to my responsibility to the citizenry? Okay, we gave Parks and Recs $20 million, or we suggested they get $20 million, assuming the council goes along with it. But everybody goes, well, the bathrooms never got fixed. There's no trees. I mean, you know, what you see what I'm saying? I mean, are we just going to be dumping money into programs that we have no way of getting? And this is something that both of you had brought up, to your credit. How do you quantify what you've done with that money? I think there needs to be something like that, because again, you're just giving them money. You know, and I hear them. I get where they're coming from. They don't have enough staff. They don't have enough this. But okay, we give planning, or we suggest that planning gets $10 million for 6 people. Are they obligated to commit to hiring 6 people, or does that money get frittered away on this and that and the other thing? That's my concern, because then we're no different.
Well, I guess
you see what I'm getting at. I mean, we're no different than the council then saying, "Oh, here's your money."
And I guess when they put their budget forward, Catherine, help us out here. When they put their budget forward, it contains what they recommend to do with whatever increase you give them over the course of the year. How does it work? Like, for instance, like he said, there was money allotted for X number of code enforcement. They're not going to make it, right, by this year because of hiring issues and other things.
Right. They actually have four empty code enforcement vacant ones that are funded.
So they'll just roll over to next year and hopefully
they'll just roll over to next year. They were funded on July 1st, so they've been funded for 8 months.
Right.
The HR department, their priority has
Sure, understood.
absolutely been PD. It's been all about all hands on deck for getting PD. Yeah, vacancies filled. So
So how does it, so,
when they turn in their budget,
yes,
they in the past, this city has had, well, it still does to a degree, incremental budgeting, meaning that if you had $1 million last year, we're going to give you $1 million this year, and then you're going to submit requests to us for
Above that.
increases with justifications. Like, I'd like another $100,000 for X, and this is
Gotcha.
what I'm going to get done with it, supposedly. Are they held accountable to that? Not necessarily. Incremental budgeting is not a
Right.
best practice for government.
Understood.
We're trying to change that, but it's
Okay.
like turning an aircraft carrier. So what we did this year is we basically zeroed out their contracts and professionals, professional services budget.
Bring it in-house.
And now they've got to justify everything that goes in. So they didn't automatically get whatever they got last year.
Okay.
They have to justify, I need this 40,000 contract for this X, and this, and that one. As far as workforce goes, when they have workforce changes, those are supplemental budget requests.
Gotcha.
And they have to justify them.
So for instance, I understand what Keith is saying, because I think, like, if we were to advocate for additional funding in public works, which we know we're gonna need general fund money to fix the roads, do they come to you with a list of projects and say, this is what we're gonna do this year, and then you track it, and then at the end of the year, they say, we did X, Y, and Z, and we didn't do A, B, C? How does that, going back to what Keith is saying about
They
accountability?
Not necessarily in the
Okay.
past. One of the things that I've done this year is I've finally got my arms around their CIP budget. So if you look in the actual budget document, it says like 59.1 million of capital funding for 1920. There's actually over 180 million funded. And a lot of those projects have just continued to roll over from year to year to year. So I now have my arms around it.
Okay.
So it's my intent to, report out
Well, then
where
well,
we
then
are
that-
with that spending.
That helps me formulate another summary point, which is accountability within the budget. Right? We've all asked for benchmarks. Carlos, welcome to the benchmark club. We've all asked for benchmarks. And how do we get benchmarks? And then, as Keith is saying, how do we get more accountability, which is what you're asking for, is what are we doing with our money? So I can report to council, we did this, we didn't do this. So,
In connection with that, how does that relate to bettering the quality of life, which the Measure X was supposed to do?
well, that's,
You see, we give, again.
that's the lens, to me, that's the lens that it all has to be looked through, right? The lens is, how are we improving the quality of life in Santa Ana?
But.
And we've
but-
decided to do, this
But
council.
targeted projects, so that would be my thing, like in Parks and Recs, they say they need better bathrooms. Well, then that should be, we should say, okay, how much money do you need for bathrooms? Get those kind of some hard figures and present that to the council, Parks and Rec says they need this.
Right.
Otherwise we're just giving them money and they kind of do what they want, if I'm not mistaken. Or not us, my apologies, not us, the council might approve our recommendations and give them.
Or at least take them to heart if they don't approve.
I'm just,
Okay,
it's
so-
my hope.
So maybe we do need to have another get together if that's possible.
It is, you can request another meeting.
Okay, I think we're gonna need that. And then let's see if we can't actually circulate things by email, right? Because then it's a Brown Act violation.
No, but we could ask each one of those departments to give us their expectation of what they're going to do with that money. And we could use that as part of the improvement and the benchmark from where they are to where they're supposed to be by the end of the year. It puts the onus on them a bit.
Is that conceivable, Kathy?
Yeah, it is. So
Go ahead.
if we look at, if we just follow Vice Chair's draft report, because it does flow nicely with the departmental section. So I take notes at every meeting, and then I, so I kind of went back to what these meetings were and looked at my notes. So what I found with PD was that the committee was very interested in a goal for response times, and they wanted to know, committee wanted to know how much Measure X it would take to reduce the response time and by how much. So if we recommended that you get an extra $5 million, how much would that reduce the response time? So that was PD. For Parks and Recreation, the similar questions were asked of them, and Director Rudloff said that she needs to complete some assessments of parks and trees before providing a needs number to the committee. So one of the things, you know, a couple of us directors are fairly new to the city, and so we're trying to make some changes for the better. And one of the things that Lisa is doing is trying to get her arms around her park operation. Exactly, an inventory and a needs assessment. So she's still working on those. I think she does have some results, but the one thing that she flat out said, in fact, it's shown here in the vice chair's draft report, is Measure X funding for recreation. It shows park maintenance and repairs of $2 million and some change, $2,024,000. I did write in my notes that during that meeting, she did say that she could probably use another $2 million for a total of $4 million. That was one of the comments that she made. And again, I'm not opining whether or not I support these, I'm just rattling back the notes that I took. The Public Works Agency, you already heard from them, and we had a graphic that we were able to share with you here, that they have a funding shortfall. You heard from a resident who said it was about $6 million. Public Works, when they made their presentation to you, said it was $7 million. So somewhere in that neighborhood, and I can tell you that they need probably another $1 to $2 million to maintain compliance to get their Measure M2 money. For CDA tonight, you've heard that the most interest that Director Mendoza has is more money for the Quality of Life team. And then you heard from Planning and Building Agency the staffing needs that he has. So those are the items that you've heard. If there's anything that you want me to quantify, I can do that. And then I've just heard you say that you're interested in finding out what they would actually accomplish if the city council were to include those things in their budget. And so I can certainly go back and ask the directors for that, like a statement, you know, say like Public Works, if you gave us an additional $2 million for streets, what would we accomplish with that? I can get that from them and report back to the committee.
If I did the math quickly, this is without adding money to any youth service program, and I gave Public Works 10 million, right? So if I started out with 60 million tax revenue, right? I minus the 4 million that you said about parks, so let's make it 5. 5 million in parks. I give 10 million to Public Works, right? What was the other million you said that was necessary?
Public Works wants 6 or 7 million for
right,
their
but
streets.
I'm just bumping it to 10. I'm
Okay,
trying to use
gotcha.
round numbers. So 60 minus 5 for Parks and Recs, minus 10 for Public Works. You said it was $1 million that CDA wanted, but let's say they need more than that. Let's say for Quality of Life team, $2 million. Code enforcement, they wanted a lot of FTEs, which is usually a big number, unfortunately. So say we gave them, how many FTEs they wanted? Five more. Well, they funded for 4 more code enforcement officers.
That's right, and they haven't been able to fill the positions.
So if we were to give them 4 more, I don't know, what does that come to? About another $1 million?
No, another 4 more would be about another 550,000.
Okay. So $500,000, and then, okay, so let's say that, and then they need planners, right? That costs them some money. So say another $2 million to them, right? That's only 20 of the 60 million.
We don't have 60.
No, but that's the problem. That's the thing. You see what I'm saying? These are the pieces that got starved the first year. This is where the next round of 60, and see, this is where the city's going to have to figure out, well, we filled the hole to maintain where we were at. but these are the pieces that were starved. This is without even asking for youth service money of, let's say, $1 million to $2 million a year. That's where the tough decisions have to be made. Go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, I was going to ask about youth services. I mean, the Parks Rec, I wasn't after the presentation that they presented around the youth programming goals, the youth programming needs that they had. And if not, like, can that also be included in, like, whatever they give back to us is, like, what is their goals for the year?
They didn't focus so much on that in their presentation, but maybe Kristen, I know that you have their presentation. You don't have to, or I guess you can put it up, but the most important thing is to flip through it and see if you see anything that was youth in there. I don't remember there was much in there for youth, but big
The
picture.
two major slides are in mine.
Oh, are they? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the
Yeah.
Major X funding as well as the future needs, those are the.
Oh, okay.
And I have the presentation here.
That's right. Oh, okay, you have it.
Yes.
But one of the things
That's it.
that I would remind the committee is Measure X is not our only source of funding. So one of the things that the council has done, this city collects cannabis tax revenue. And they've allocated 2/3 of that, set aside, and said, okay, of that 2/3, 1/3 is going to go to enforcement, because obviously if you introduce cannabis and industry into your city, there's some enforcement issues that come with that. And then the other 1/3 is for youth services. So they've already taken something that is really general fund money, and they've allocated a large portion of it to youth services. And at the time that the budget was adopted, that was $3.1 million. Since then, the city council has allocated another $1 million to it from our excess leftover that we had from the prior fiscal year. So now they have $4 million to work with for the year. I don't think they've spent hardly any of that.
For youth services.
For youth services. So I know that the ballot measure said youth services, but there is already a very significant funding source going to that. That is still general fund money.
So if we were to play this out, if we were to do one-time expenses with the youth service money that you've got in here of 900, what is it? What is it? In youth services is 940. That's ongoing. I don't know if that's staff or whatever that is. But if I were to hypothetically shift that to fix the parks, right? Right? Fix a couple bathrooms, add some lights. See, because the goal for me right now is that these ongoing expenses block the way of us doing the deferred maintenance, the roads, the basic block and tackle stuff that cities do. And we've got to get away from doing that so we can get the basic stuff done, so that we can add the extra stuff on top of it. We need the city needs to be hardwired. The stuff needs to be taken care of, and how we do that, and whether the roads are, and how we do that. And if this additional tax revenue, unfortunately, currently so much of it is earmarked for recurring expenses, we have to figure a way away from that. Like, if the sidewalk is damaged, we gotta figure out a way to get it fixed. If the road has got potholes, it's gotta be fixed. When you're down by South Coast Plaza, and you leave Costa Mesa and you enter Santa Ana, you know you're in Santa Ana. Because it's like we put sand and we put some slurry over it and we hope the road works. So we need to figure out how we do that. And I think that goes back to one of our original comments, which was one-time expenses, not recurring expenses. I mean, it all goes back in that direction. So I look at what it is that we are looking for 15. So that's basically an additional $20 million. If I were to do the math, it was $5 million for Parks and Recs, $10 million for the roads, $2 million for, I don't remember. Yeah, CDA and these guys and that's it. So we gave them 60. They spent 50 something. We have to figure out a way to carve some of it back in some way and readjust it. So that's up to the council to decide. But I think if we put forward, Keith, the thrust of these other pieces were starved this time. It's time you give them your due. You guys figure out how you do want to do that.
I don't think it's just, quite frankly, I don't think it's been just this time. It's been ongoing.
I agree with you, but now that we've been created for the 60 million.
No, I fully appreciate that.
It's easier to say, hey, these other departments, we listen to the other department. We listen to the police come in. You, council, made a decision to do X. Now these other pieces, they need money. You guys figure out what you want to do.
Well, and stressing the point that those are quality of life issues,
Yes.
which Measure X was intended for.
Yes.
That's my whole gist of this thing, and it's for the people, and that's what seems to be lost in these discussions. This is for the people of Santa Ana. It ain't for the businesses, it ain't for nobody else, it's for the people.
All right.
Yeah, just going back to my comment on the youth, and thank you for clarifying about the funding, resource of funding, but it also raises a flag going back to the benchmarks of like, if there has been about $4 million allocated for youth services that haven't been spent yet. So what are the metrics, what are the outcomes that we're expecting to get out of that? Because we have a youth population that needs those services. So if anything, how can we also explore that?
Can I ask a quick question? Youth services being?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Youth services what? I mean, what does that entail? Is that after school
Well-
programs, before school programs, daycare?
It can be liberally interpreted. You're absolutely correct. At the time that the budget was adopted, there was basically a recommendation for the, I think they have some kind of youth commission or something like that, to help build a program of how to spend this money. So I don't know how that's going. I think Lisa has a plan, but I don't know how much of it has been implemented.
But there are current programs, correct, for before and after school programs that the city funds, correct?
I believe so. Is there? Sergio, how much do you know about that?
Good evening. There is some youth programs that they have programmed in some of their cost centers, but as Director Downs mentioned, it's to obtain this level of funding with the existing staff that they have. It is a little bit challenging. Obviously, they need to get boots on the ground. They need to get these employees hired in to be able to, to get started and to just do that strategic planning and begin that process.
But correct me if I'm wrong, there are programs in place. The money just is not going to them.
There are programs in place, so the amount of programs is what's in question, or the more programs or additional hours that they want to be spent. So a couple of years ago, the city did not operate the library, for example, where a lot of youth program does occur. They didn't have youth programming they didn't have the library open on Sundays. So one of the initiatives a few years back was to open on Sundays. In essence, that's kind of like the strategic thinking. Where do they want to allocate their sources? Do they want to increase the number of classes? Or do they want to just provide more hours, more days, so forth? So that's kind of the strategic plan that needs to be involved first before they roll out what exactly they want to do. And just kind of what the commissioner mentioned is what are the outcomes that are going to be expected.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Catherine, can I ask a question? I know it's been a long meeting, but let me ask you a question and see if we can't help you as we go through this process. You've been trying to get your arms around inventorying. Lots of departments have to be inventoried, and we have to fix how things are budgeted. When I was in the private sector, the company made money, but guess what? Cut your budget by 10%. Yeah, we made money, we gave out bonuses, but guess what? Cut your budget by 10%. Some of these things have just rolled over, and they have been unable to fulfill these things or complete the services or do whatever they need to do. As you go through the budget process this year, what is your main goal? Because what we've been trying to do is install benchmarks and everything and look at outcomes. Carlos just joined, he's asking the same questions we did, which is no different. And you ask the departments, and I use public safety as an example because they give us no answers. And that's what they always do. The blue line goes up, they don't answer until later. If we put in our report, we'd like benchmarks each year and outcomes each year. If we put that in our presentation, would that assist you in the process of figuring out what we need to do? Because to me, I think that's frustrated all of us. Like, where did we start and where are we going? So if we put that as a summary line, besides, please don't expend beyond what you have. The second one would be, we need benchmarks and we need outcomes for each department each year, so we can report back to the citizens what happened. I don't know if that would help you or hurt you. I don't know.
Well, I'll just be very honest with you, like I usually am. My first budget season here, that was one of the first things that I asked for from departments. I'm like, I looked in the budget document at the performance indicators, and I went, no, these are service level numbers. They're not performance indicators. They don't tell the story of how well you're doing your job. They're just telling me how many things you do. And so I asked the departments for that, and I didn't really get much traction on it. I've asked again this year for it. I don't know how much traction I'm getting this year. I can enforce things as a finance director, like I'm not going to pay any more money. I'm not going to issue any more POs out of your budget because you've already spent your budget. I can enforce things like we can't add that person to payroll because you weren't authorized for it. Those are things that I can enforce. I can say, I'm not going to cut a check out of that fund because you've already depleted your fund or you've depleted your budget. Those are the things I can enforce. Unfortunately, I don't have, well, fortunately or unfortunately, however you see it, I don't have the power to enforce against my colleagues for, performance, measuring their performance.
Well, I can tell you what, I'm pretty young and old at the same time, I feel. And I've never been in a business that doesn't have KPIs, or in your case, service level indicators. I'm really curious to know how we could help you get that, because
Well, it's one of the things that we're going to try to add with, so one of the projects that I got tossed in my lap was a strategic plan. So we're starting like right now, working through a 5-year strategic plan, and it will have KPIs in it, no doubt.
good. Maybe we could add that to our package. I agree.
Well, let's see. We're going to need another session to bang out what we need to present. I'm happy to take a first crack at like 5 PowerPoint slides, because Tim, your work is so thorough, it just has to be attached to try to get something succinctly symbolized so that Chairman Keith can understand what we're talking about. So his eyes don't glaze over. But I'll take a crack at it. I'm happy to take a crack at it, share it with Catherine, use what he gave us. And if I can't copy and paste stuff, then I'm happy to say this is what needs to go there.
And my eyes glaze over like the rest of the populace, so you got to understand.
Right, no. And I understand that. I understand that. And the most difficult.
Simple, man.
And what Tim said today is true. The detail is very, very important.
It is. I agree, 100%.
The detail is essential. The problem is that the message, the public message, needs to be succinct and to the point. And the point is, this is what we got in, this is what was spent, and this is what we think you need to do. You need to improve the quality of life stuff funding.
With quantitative.
Right, with benchmarks and with outcomes. So the public can understand what happened to the tax money they approved.
Well, and to me, it's not so much about a matter of understanding. That's what was committed to in the Measure X funds. That's what it was all about.
I agree,
But
and
I agree. This is gold, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
No, it
more
lays it
information
out.
than I could ever
Does that
assimilate.
So you guys okay with me taking a crack at a simple 5? I'm going to try to limit it to 5 slides, because Catherine said succinct is better than length, and I'll see what I get. If you guys don't like it, you don't like it.
Well, you
I
had
think
a start on that from one of our meetings, correct?
Yeah, I have the slides I can
If you
send
can, you can
Yeah.
resend those to me.
Yeah.
And then I'll try to wordsmith it so it's using everybody's comments, because I think that the first bullet point has to be quality of life programs have to be increased. The second bullet point is we need benchmarks and outcomes so that the public understands what's going on. Because if we had benchmarks, we would, with these questions, the police came in here with a response time, and then we asked them, okay, if you had fully funded, what would the response time be? Didn't get an answer. Then we asked them to compare Anaheim to Santa Ana. We couldn't get an answer.
Automated or manual.
Right.
When I get there.
It's just, so it's those types, and I understand your frustration because we all have bosses that say, hey, what did you do with the money?
Well, and I think that's kind of, no offense, but I think this is kind of lost on the council. They work for us. We don't work for them.
That's
and
another
I
part.
think that gets lost in translation somehow.
So is there a date we could be looking at? sometime in April? If you're lucky enough to get the 21st.
And let me just say that, you can have more than just one you can be involved with Keith.
I'm happy to share it.
So,
I'm just happy to take a crack at it.
We just can't all be involved with it, and can't have more
Right,
than
no,
4
no.
people. I'm
I'm
cautious,
happy.
and so I sent this to Keith only, and was like, hey,
So-
I'm not sharing with
so-
anyone else, because I
so-
don't,
so-
but you don't have to do it all.
No, but I'm gonna take what you got here and what we discussed and try to cram it into 5 slides that are legible, succinct, and simple for the people to understand.
And
So
you'll
I'm gonna try
find,
to message out this.
and you'll find that in the report that Catherine, the slide deck that Catherine put out is, all
Most
the,
of it's in there.
it's in here, and so, I think you're gonna want to essentially utilize that as the backbone,
Yes.
and then put in
I will-
some numbers.
I'll try to wordsmith it and
Um,
get numbers and do it.
and whatnot. But pretty much everything that's in that slide deck is in here. It's just not as pretty.
Real quick question. We'd also discussed a presentation at a council meeting, so the public was privy to this also. Is that still on the plate?
Well, that's what I was recommending
Yeah,
that you do with the April workshop.
Right.
Is that a?
Oh, like a
No,
presentation
at the council
time.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the budget meeting, that's pretty public, right? All the council members are there, so it's televised, or is it's at least recorded?
Yes,
Sure.
yes.
just be earlier in the
absolutely.
day.
This would be
Yes,
earlier in the day
yes.
without the public present, though, correct?
The public would be welcome, so undoubtedly you would have some members of the public there.
But not like a regular council meeting.
Unlikely. Most of the audience that's there during normal public meetings
Exactly.
are there for like a very specific project or something. And then as soon as that project thing is
But
heard,
if
they
the
usually
coronavirus
leave.
continues, we were just talking about this earlier, they may ban the public and just put it online and you can submit your comments by email.
But that outstanding, we had also discussed having that, that public
Yes.
presentation too, for the public's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
benefit. Because this, again, is more pointed to the council, and again, will be, that's not going to be the general public there most likely.
Yes.
So are we still okay with doing that?
I
thought
believe
that
so.
was the point of Mr. Leo's
Yeah.
deck.
Mm-hmm.
Him cramming this into 5.
That's for you're talking about for the budget.
I could
meeting
do
for
it.
the-
I could do it at a public meeting too. But she wants something to
For
get
the-
in before the budget.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. That's
Yeah.
the
So-
council meeting, the budget.
So let's just
workshop.
work backwards, which is what we always do when we look at meetings. If we're lucky enough to get a budget workshop scheduled on April 21st, and keep in mind, we haven't yet, if that were the case, that the materials for that agenda are due April 8th. And so in order to hit April 8th with some measure of, review for formatting and this and that and the other thing, I would say that you should strive to have your meeting no later than the first week of April.
Okay.
And
Well, most business
potentially
times
sooner.
canceled, so. Can't go anywhere.
April 1st is a good day? Oh, wait a second, no, we have Delhi Community Budget Meeting on April 1st.
Oh, there you go. So you're having another budget meeting.
So is there a requirement that our meetings are on Wednesday?
No, not at all.
They're just
If you
looking at
want to
the
pick
calendar.
another night,
Right.
I'd stay away from Tuesday nights
That's council meeting,
March 31st
31st
is not a council meeting, and we don't have any community meeting that is scheduled, so March 31st is fair game. I can't guarantee that it'll be in this room, because that's
It's
another
okay.
thing we'll have to do is go back
Have
and
it at a
look.
coffee
but-
shop as long as we post it,
Yeah,
right?
correct. You're absolutely right. We can have it in any room.
In Santa Ana, somewhere in Santa
Yeah,
Ana.
yeah. No, we could fly to Hawaii, very cheap right now.
We'd be the only people on the plane, keeping our social distance.
Yeah, go to Italy, you can get there cheap too.
Okay,
Just
so,
can't make
well, if you send me the slides, it's not gonna take that long, I don't
Yeah.
think, to put the stuff in there and to play with the words a little bit, so.
Okay.
Same time, guys, 6 o'clock.
So March 31st, what we're looking at?
So just to keep in mind that when you go to adjourn the meeting, I'm not saying we're there yet, but when you go to adjourn the meeting, just adjourn to March 31st at 6 PM instead of what's on the.
Yeah, so we need a motion to set the meeting, is that the next meeting?
Yeah, it would be a good idea, just for the
Okay.
record, to have a
So-
motion.
So I would move that we would set a second, a special meeting Date to be determined, hopefully March 31st, right? Is that what we said?
March 31st.
March 31st.
Were each of you able to
dis-
check your availability or no?
6
I'm
PM?
good.
Okay.
I don't know.
To discuss and finalize presentation to the annual budget meeting of the city council.
Okay, so March 31st at 6 PM.
Yeah, second.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
okay, all right.
Oh, good.
Okay, and just to kind of give everybody homework, I think I need to spend a little bit of time in kind of filling out some of these bullet points. Should I spend some time doing that for the benefit of the committee, and should we all do that? That way we come back during that meeting and have something that we could kind of focus on for.
If I can finish the slides ahead of time, when we do the special meeting, you can send that out as part of what you review, right? So
Okay.
I'll make it a point to get it done soon.
Okay.
So then I get it to Catherine, so when you notice the meeting, there's draft or preliminary slides, then,
Okay.
and you can vet
what-
whatever you have to vet, so
so-
it doesn't set off fireworks.
And then in terms of this, do you want to take some wordsmithing
Yeah,
on it?
I
Is
just
that-
want to be able to fill in some of the highlighted areas that need a little bit of fill out. I
Okay.
mean, I took as much notes as I think everyone else did, and I could go through and do the same thing that Catherine did and just kind of fill out some of the big bullet points that I believe we would want to share, but can we also ask these departments to give us an if statement? If you received your measure X dollar, this is what we're going to get?
Yeah, I can ask the
That-
directors for that, absolutely.
I think that will help us, galvanize exactly what this says. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna do the same, as time allows during this time of year for me. But, we,
Anytime the president's gonna move the tax day.
yeah. He can move it all he wants. I guarantee you, March 15th.
People are gonna fly.
I guarantee March 15th means something,
All
April
right.
15th is still gonna mean something. So,
Okay, good.
Okay, do we want to move on to staff member comments, or is there anything else we want to discuss?
I want to welcome Carlos to the committee. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
no, absolutely, thank you.
Thank you for coming, and hopefully you enjoyed the first meeting.
Definitely a lot of learning.
Yeah, we have no further comments.
No further
And-
comments?
and I would-
Any committee comments?
But I would like to thank the four folks in the audience also who
Hung in there.
hung in through this whole thing. And hopefully there's some, you guys learn some stuff and can provide feedback as you feel appropriate, so thank you.
And I'd also like to encourage you to get your neighbors and friends and everybody else to come to these meetings, including the council meetings and your neighborhood association meetings, because if nobody's involved, nothing changes, folks. And the council will do what they want if they don't hear from anybody. That's my little piece of advice. Okay, so with that, we have any more further comments, questions, interjections, jokes? No. Okay, so we will adjourn until March the 31st at 6 PM.
Yeah.
Tentatively, correct?
Yep. Sounds good.
All righty.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.